Welcome to the Independent Characters, episode 230, the Show of Force update for Space Marines and Tyranids.
Watch out.
So if you don't know what Show of Force is here at the Independent Characters, Show of Force is where we do... So let's start with, when we started this program, Jeff and I, the one thing we didn't want to do was Codex overviews.
Right.
Every podcast out there would effectively read the Codex to you.
Yeah. Entries, rules, stats.
That was it. There's, now this creature has 5 attacks and blah, blah, blah. And I could not tell you how bored I was during those episodes. Like, at its height, it was the worst. Like, they were literally just reading
line by line.
And so when Jeff and I started the program, one of the things we said was, we will not do Codex overviews. There is enough shows out there that are doing it. We don't need to be one of those shows. So then I proposed Show of Force to Jeff. And Jeff said, wasn't that a Codex overview? And I said, it's not, because what we do is we look at the history of the army within the game. Like, when did it come out? Blah, blah, blah. Where it sits in functionally in all of the armies, what its release cycle has looked like, how it's fared over those times.
Yeah.
What the lore behind the army is.
Lore, a few standout units, maybe.
Yeah.
Models very specifically.
That we think are really cool. We talk about it, how it narratively, it makes some fun, games, and then a little bit of competitive talk as well. And for those of you who have listened for a while, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And we've done these shows, and they're honestly some of our most popular episodes.
Yeah.
And they usually go quite long, We're picking our favorite models, our favorite units, blah, blah, blah. But the game has evolved since then, like the Tyranids.
Right.
And we're still not doing Codex overviews. But what we thought was, it's probably time to update some of the Show of Force episodes. Those Show of Force episodes are still fairly relevant.
Yeah. By and large, almost everything about them is relevant.
Yeah. But not only has the lore progressed a bit.
Yep.
But there's been new units added and new models, and especially with Leviathan, as we'll get into, the Tyranids had I wouldn't even call it like a model, like a few models added. Like it's a whole update to almost.
It feels like half the range.
Half the range was updated. So we thought it was time to maybe update the Show of Force. So this is kind of an addendum to what we've discussed before. And we'll talk a little bit about the lore. We'll talk about how it's progressed a bit. We'll talk about where the army sits now, what we think about it. And we've also had a couple guest interviews that we will include, which are more competitive players than we are.
Right. Yep.
And they will talk to us a little bit about how the army fares competitively and what their thoughts are and where they think it'll wind up.
Yeah.
And what they like to roll with. Spoiler alert, if it's a good unit, take 3 of them. It's the old Justin special.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited for you guys to hear from those, because we did those interviews over the last week or so.
Yep.
And I think there's some great information. Certainly, I haven't heard Josh's yet, so I'm excited to hear that. Josh, you decided to run the coverage for the Space Marines. I took for the Tyranids.
Yeah.
So that's what the show is all about. It's just about updating those Show of Force episodes a little bit. And the next thing I want to talk about is our Patreon sponsors. As you know, we have a Patreon to help support the show and help us continue to do what we're doing and do new things. And so this show is brought to you by Nick Staffas and Lobokai.
Nice.
I don't think Lobokai is his real name.
No, it is.
That's awesome.
It's on the birth certificate.
Just like Cher.
Lobokai.
It's just Lobokai.
One name.
Or Sting.
Yeah.
Or Bono.
Yeah.
Okay.
Huge thanks to you and everybody else on Patreon who supports us.
It's so helpful.
Yeah, it'd be hard for us to be here right now with that.
Yeah. In fact, I was just talking to Josh over lunch. The expenses for the website are coming down. And I'm like, Josh, it costs this much and we got to split it. And so, yeah. So anyway, very helpful. Thank you. We do appreciate it. All right, want to leap into elite choice? Why don't you go first?
Sounds great. Yeah. I went with Landon Davis Fisher and his Raptors. And these are a pretty incredibly well executed model of Space Marine intercessors. They are painted in Raptor scheme, so largely kind of green with some yellow accents for the particular company of Raptors that he's gone with. The detail on these is incredible. The faces are just absolutely amazing. You get the 5 o'clock shadow going on, kind of the stubble beards for the Marines there. Every edge is highlighted, the weathering, the detail,
the weathering is
highlights. It's spot on. Like as soon as I saw this, it called out to me. There was actually a call out for this one to get called out, and which I had called out in our notes before I had seen that call out.
That is true.
When the community's saying this one deserves to be called out, like it definitely
we listen.
Yeah. No.
But at the same time, we also go, well, listen, I don't want somebody to just tag me and be like, this one should be it. And I'm going to do it. Like, I'm still going to pick what I like.
Right. Yeah.
By the time this was done, I had already picked mine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you had picked this
and
already.
I had not seen the call out, but I had already made it my choice. So it really just fantastically exeted. Landon does say he paints at a glacier pace.
One of my favorite Space Marine chapters.
Oh yeah. I've had a handful of people that we played more regularly have Raptors, which is
Raptors and striking Scorpions too. I always loved because it was a Forge World, thing. But man,
Red Scorpions,
cool. Yeah, Red Striking Scorpions. Yeah, the Space Marine chapter named after the famous Eldar.
No, Red Scorpions Scorpions. I love that color scheme.
Me too.
Yeah, and the Severin Loth,
so good.
Librarian, one of my favorite models ever.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, just really well done, Landon. I know you're a slow painter, but you obviously are taking your time and doing it right. So keep it up. This is incredible.
Look good. Yeah, they look really good.
So how about yourself?
So look, early on I picked mine, which was Cameron Swarbrick and his Death Guard Land Raider. And again, I think the thing, number one, I'm a huge Death Guard fan. I always have been. Yeah. But but number two, it's really the weathering on this.
It looks like a Spartan.
Oh, excuse me. It's a Spartan, not a Spartan assault tank, not a Land Raider. I think I put in the notes Land Raider. But it is a Spartan assault tank, which is also, by the way, one of my favorite vehicles.
Even better.
Yeah. So it's so well done, and just the weathering on it looks so good. And I always shy away from doing like heavy weathering, even though I did take a weathering class from Mr. Justin way back in
just
the
recently,
day.
15 years ago.
Yeah, just recently, 10 years ago. It's funny for those not in on the joke that we used to run a commercial for Secret Weapon Miniatures at the time, and in the commercial, I would say, I just took this weathering class with Mr. Justin from Secret Weapon Miniatures, and that commercial probably ran for like 3 years. Or 8 years.
Yeah, feels like longer.
It was about 3 years. Yeah. But that weathering class was super interesting. And what's funny is, as I was working on the website because of the upcoming bill, I found all the pictures from that class in there. So I was like, oh yeah, this is a Mr. Justin class. But the weathering on Cameron's Spartan assault tank is so good here. Even the verdigris in the fly on the doors just looks solid. Like every piece of this is awesome. On top of that,
rust effect on the assault ramp.
And on top of that, he did the inside of the vehicle, which I never do the inside of a vehicle.
Yeah.
Are you kidding? Hey, glue it shut.
Yeah, it is a gorgeous giant tank. So
well done. And Shell's Kiss.
Yes.
Shell's Kiss. Shell picked this out early, which was a knight from Philip Mendoza. And this knight, listen, Philip. Listen, all you guys. There's a couple ways to get on Shell's Kiss list. I'm going to tell you what those are. Number one, purple on a model.
Yep.
Purple on a model will get her. Number two, apparently having family involved in painting along with you will always tug at her heartstrings too. But she really did love the paint job here. And it works. It really works well. Her favorite colors are purple and yellow, and that is represented here really well.
Is this night.
And it's great. It's awesome looking.
Great looking knight. I really like almost the 3D flame effect that is going on one of the shoulder pads.
Yep.
And listeners, I apologize for my voice here. I'm a little raspy from just lost my voice in a really weird way.
Got a flu shot.
And lost
your voice went away.
It's coming back.
I said we could delay.
Nah.
All right. If I wind up with
the band's gonna make it.
Yeah, it's a great model. I even like the burn effect on the cannon.
Yeah,
it looks fantastic.
There,
yeah. So what a great model. And she was actually the first one to pick. So she picked this quite a while ago, and she was like, "This model, look at this. Did you see this?" I mean, we were at dinner and she was showing it to me. So she is looking.
Yeah,
she does. She absolutely follows what people are doing there. Yeah. So I think that's it. We can kind of just take a short break, come back, launch into Workbench and Hobby Progress.
Hobby Progress.
Games played. All right.
Yeah.
So we will be right back. All right, we're back. Let's leap into the Workbench here, Josh. I'll go first. Then you can read your...
I'll keep mine shorter.
You can read your long diatribe of stuff. I haven't done any work on Abaddon, but we're gonna be guests on Dave Taylor's Build Paint Play show coming up towards the end of the month. So I need to get him done before I get to that. I did assemble Legions Imperialis stuff.
Yeah, you did.
I hate you so much.
Welcome to the party.
I hate you so much. And that little chat we have going in like that private Discord thing where you guys are showing the stuff you're doing. Every time I look at that, I'm like, I am falling so far behind these guys. Okay, so I've assembled 10 rhinos. I assembled 2 of the Kratos tanks. I have 2 more of those to assemble. They actually go together pretty nice.
Yeah.
And then I have cut out one. I finally was able to get from Herrick Games 2 boxes of infantry for the Space Marines, so I'm good to go there.
That'll keep you out of trouble for a while.
I think that stuff plus the Titans I have will keep me rocking and rolling as you guys have gotten started.
The only big thing you're missing are just kind of the core battle tanks with the Spartans and Predators, because they're not out yet. Separately yet. Yeah. They're only available in the core set at the moment.
Predators and
Spartan or Sicarans.
Sicaran tanks. So yeah, as soon as those become available, I'll pick up a couple of those too. But I'm going to do Sons of Horus. I've picked the paint I'm going to do. I'm moments away from literally getting them at least moving forward. So very close to that.
Awesome.
Because I want to play in, I think, that thing that Herrick is doing, that Sky's setting up for the learning day or whatever.
Yeah, we got a couple Legions Imperialis game days specifically happening at Herrick in Santa Cruz Mountains, and one coming up later this month. And
we'll talk games played in a minute, because I'm so mad you got me into this game. I'm so mad. I also painted up some board game pieces for Nemesis Lockdown. The reason I mentioned that is because I was using the Army Painter speed paints that they sent over to us. And I got to tell you, like, I'm in love with them, like absolutely in love with them.
Especially for something like that, where you slap shop a board game piece and
so easy. It goes together so easy. It, I'm able to just get them up and playable on the table super fast. But I do use the speed paints in a number of ways. And in fact, they become part of like what do you call it? Like my arsenal of things that I use. Like I'm even using some of them on Abaddon, as I go through painting him up. There's certain things I've definitely said, okay, I'm going to speed paint this part, but I'm going to do this with this part. And I think he's coming out great. So, it's a great kit. Now, what's interesting is we mentioned this before. When you shake them, they do have a ball in there that helps agitate the paint.
Yeah, 2 in fact.
2 balls in there.
How'd you find out?
Yeah, because with dropper bottles, you got to be careful. If they're plugged up in the slightest, stick a pin in there, unplug it up.
Yep.
Do not squeeze the bottle.
Don't apply more force.
As hard as you can, because the top comes off and you drain out 4/5 of a bottle of paint into at least it all went into my
your little palette there.
My palette. Yeah. It could have been such a bad mess. And I don't want to be the guy that's talking about spilling Nuln oil or anything. That's not what I'm saying, but do not squeeze these things harder than if it's a little bit plugged up, just stick a
Yeah.
pin in there and unplug it and then go. I learned my lesson. And the worst part is I knew this lesson. I knew this because I exploded blue paint all over my old couch and it never got out.
Yeah.
And I was so upset. And I should have known better. It will not happen again.
When you're on a roll, sometimes you just don't want to take that time to put a paper clip or a pin in there. But you should. The cleanup takes longer.
Yeah. What a mess. Anyway, I discovered there are two agitator balls in each of those bottles.
Get a great mix that
way.
Great.
It's great. Josh, what have you been working on? Holy mackerel, you liar.
I'll start with the 40K first. So I did build the jump pack assault intercessors and the jump pack captain. Largely because I have my 2,000 point list of sharks kind of dialed in for what I want to have. 60% of it's fully painted. The rest of it, I think, will come together pretty quick. These were the last models I needed to build for this army to be complete.
Yeah.
So I do have them at least built.
They look cool.
Yeah, they're cool models.
Like now that I've seen them in person assembled.
We were talking in the spoiler, the game we were playing earlier, but I'm also, I 3D printed some of the jetpack effects for that. Cause the one thing I don't love about those models is they're all kind of like pirouetting off of a concrete rubble.
Yeah.
So, doing some more, kind of lighting effects with those, it's all the jump actually jet coming out that the jump jet attaches to the base and gets some.
So is it like flame coming out of the bottom of the jet?
It's more of that kind of smoky, like billowing smoke.
Got it. Okay.
So I'll do some kind of OSL. I'm not sure yet if I want to do it more fiery or more of like a blue kind of plasma thing like that. But yeah, those turned out really well. Love the models. I started painting my Necron Chronomancer once the Codex came out. Got my hands on that. That was the one cryptech that I didn't have painted already.
Right.
I already had the model, so I got it built and started the painting on that one. That'll finish up pretty quick. Just as soon as I do a batch of Necrons, I can bust out a bunch at the same time.
Yeah.
I've been doing a ton of 3D printing, largely for Legions Imperialis. So objective tokens, craters, buildings, things like that. That's all come together very well.
Are you using the PLA printer for the one I loaned you for the building?
Yeah. So I'm using your PLA printer for buildings, craters, objective markers, things like that. I'm using my resin printer.
Gotcha.
Just to get the more kind of fine detail stuff.
Yep.
Took a couple files into Blender and combining objects so I can print out objectives that are like Thousand Suns logo on one side, icon, and then the actual order on the other side, and that fits within a nice ring, and those will get painted up and be gorgeous.
So what I'm hearing is you could do Sons of Horus too.
Yeah, absolutely. I have the files for them. So
I may have you do that for me.
Yeah, I could combine them. You've got the printer, so I can even just send you the thing and have you.
Oh, you're doing those in the PLA?
Yeah. No, those are resin.
Oh, yeah, I could do it in mine.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I have a resin printer.
You have a resin printer.
Very cool.
Aside from that, obviously alluding to all the things around it, but Legions Imperialis has definitely pulled focus for me, and I have been building and painting a massive collection for Legions Imperialis. I bought the starter set. I traded my Solar Auxiliary half away of that for more Marines, so I doubled up on Marines right there. And then out of the blue,
which also gave you some of those core tanks we were talking about.
Doubled the tanks, doubled the infantry, of those core tanks. So I have a large collection of those.
Nice.
And then got a surprise shipment in the mail delivered via Brian from Colin Ward, friend of the show, painter of your Thousand Suns, among other things. He actually gave me a ton of stuff that he had either painted or had work in progress painted towards Thousand Suns, and then
Legions Imperialis.
For Legions Imperialis, and then he opted not to do Marines. He only wanted to play Solar Auxiliary. So
interesting.
Knowing that I was doing Thousand Suns, he just shipped me a bunch of stuff. So it's like huge shout out to that.
Man.
And I have so much stuff now. Like
you're set.
I am absolutely set until new stuff comes out that I feel I absolutely have to have, because my core is very covered with all the infantry and base tanks I also have Rhinos and Kratos tanks. So I've got tanks coming out of my ears right now. Yeah. And I will also give a shout out to Army Painter, because they sent us one of their Fanatic sets. Yeah. And I have been playing with those.
I was going to ask if you'd been using them.
I've only used a few colors so far, but the ones I have used, I absolutely love.
Oh, nice.
The pigmentation is very high. Sorry, I got to clear my throat. There we go. The pigmentation is really high. So they are incredibly pigmented paints, but they also have a longer working time with them.
Oh, interesting.
So if you pour a little bit of paint into a palette that's not a wet palette,
it takes longer to dry.
It takes longer to dry, which for me has been a big pro actually. Like I'm
Interesting.
wasting way less paint because it's just staying usable on that palette.
Yeah.
Painting over, because I'm doing the metallic red look for my Thousand Suns and Legions Imperialis, the classic Heresy metallic red for them. Doing the clear red coats to get up to that point is actually, it's really difficult to paint on top of that because it's a very low surface tension, glossy kind of surface that you have after that. So having a paint that actually has a little bit more working time is helping me like go back and correct.
Right.
Even though it's highly pigmented, so it's not thin to the point where it's too thin. It just lets me kind of pull it around a little bit more. So it's definitely saved me a few gray hairs in painting already, and I can't wait to jump into the rest of those colors to play around.
It was a ton of colors too.
Yeah,
it was a ton. I'm telling you, I think they're killing it, and their price point is like reasonable. I mean, look, these sets, like the speed paint set they sent us, is expensive. It's like $400.
It's a lot of
something dollars, but it is like every color of these paints. I mean, you don't have to buy. You don't have to buy that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the cost per bottle, it's, you know, I look at how many paints I have, both Games Workshop, Vallejo, AK Interactive.
Yeah.
Now the speed paint and some of the Fanatic paints. I'm like, that's a lot of money in paints. I mean, that adds up.
Oh, absolutely.
I remember we did an episode, the like hidden costs of 40K number of years ago, and paints is like, it sneaks up on you how much you have spent on paint.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Over time. So
Especially
that's fantastic.
now that pots are upwards of $9 depending on company and size and all that. Yeah. So I'll play with these a lot more. The color kind of sets that I'm using for Legions Imperialis is already pretty dialed in. I'll definitely use a couple of those paints there.
See, I'm going to start with the Army Painter stuff for the Sons of Horus. So
really, I think of where I'm really going to enjoy the Fanatic paints is something that I'm going to do fully new for.
Like your Eldar?
Eldar. So I think Eldar, being able to thin those paints that are so heavily pigmented and do a little bit more airbrush work with them, I think they're going to be amazing. So I'm really excited to.
Well, you know, they have an airbrush line too.
They do. Our interview with Adam, though, he was talking about how much he really enjoys thinning these because they are so heavily pigmented that I'm really excited to
Very cool.
kind of dive deeper into them. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. For games played, I'll go ahead and so we're alternating. I'll go first. I finally played Cursed City.
Oh yeah.
With Aaron and Shell.
Nice.
Very fun.
Yeah.
A very fun game. I had painted everything for it.
Right.
It makes such a difference. Yeah. I know Jody and you and everybody's like, oh, you know, we paint our board game models. Board games. And I know that Jody's wife, Aaliyah, refuses to play unless
unpainted
it's painted.
Board games. Yeah.
I'm not going to go that far, but boy, it was nice. It was nice to pull out, you know, all the models were painted. We got to play some Cursed City finally. It was a lot of fun.
Nice.
It was a lot of fun. I like the game. We want to continue playing it.
It's such a gorgeous set that I've always been tempted to play it, but
well, you know, you can jump anytime because you play 4 characters regardless.
Okay. Yeah.
So like Aaron was playing 2 and Shell and I were each playing 1. So if you want to join us, you just take one of those characters and you're good to go.
I'll check it out.
I was still playing a lot of Rogue Trader, the computer RPG. Now, to be fair, I did run into a show-stopping bug at one point. I mean, I've heard a lot of complaints about how the game is buggy, especially in the later part of the game. And it is. Like, as you get further into the game, like clearly they concentrated on like the opening stuff. And but they are rolling out patches incredibly fast. So I did run into a show-stopping bug. Thank God. I mean, like, because it stopped me from playing the game for like 2 days. Then a patch came out and fixed it. And I was like, okay, I'm back off to the races.
Back at
it. But I've run through the whole thing. Loved it. I'll play it again at some point.
So you did finish it?
I finished.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And stupid Baldur's Gate 3. You know, I got to stop.
Start it up again?
Yeah. Anyway.
I still need to finish that.
I got to tell you, I loved this game. Loved it.
Nice.
And I'm curious to see like when they patch and things get even more stabilized, you know, what things get added and then what expansions they add to it because there's already some planned. So I'm in. Like it was awesome. Made me want to play the tabletop RPG. And then you and I played a game of Tyranids and Space Marines in preparation for this episode.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about that after you do your your games played.
Okay. Yeah. So the main thing for me is I have gotten 3 games of Legions Imperialis in over our holiday break here. 2 of them were very small games with Jody that just happened the other day.
You said they took only like 45, 50 minutes.
The first game was a little bit longer, even though it was a smaller game, just because it was Jody's absolute first game.
Right. Learning
just
the
making
rules
sure to like look up every role we had a question, just make sure we're doing everything right.
Yeah.
That was very specifically the starter box of Marines against the starter box of Solar Auxiliary.
Gotcha.
Minus a couple of things, because the Solar Auxiliary actually come with like an extra 150 points.
Oh, interesting.
Of stuff. Yeah. So he just pared down what he brought slightly to make that an even match. Super fun game, super close. Jody also played a lot of Epic and Space Marine and Space Marine 2, so like kind of right up his alley. His stuff looks incredible, even at that scale. Like, of course, he does a fantastic job. Super great game.
Stuff looked great.
Really good to play a game with
stuff
Jody
looked really good was Austin Lynn's.
Yeah.
As well.
His white scars
Holy
really
smokes.
looking good. Yeah.
They're like, again, yeah. Okay.
Just wait till you see Ivan's stuff in person and all of his hazard stripes at 8mm scale on rhinos.
Because I'm telling you, assembling these things is not easy. Like,
it's a surprising amount of part. Like a rhino is something like 8 pieces.
and I'm pulling out like tweezers to stick certain things on, like the rocket launcher and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And my fingers are too big to hold it down without
They're not as small as the Goliath cigar, but
they're darn close.
They're pretty small. There's some small parts.
That's true.
Yeah. Yep. So we played a game and then we re-racked it. It was a really close. I think it was a 5-point game. It was like 35 to 40 points or something like that. Just 3 objectives in the middle. We did a smaller table because it's a smaller scale game. And then we re-racked it and we're able to play a second game in about 45 minutes.
Nice.
And this Jody brought the full Solar Auxiliary half, so I just added 2 Kratos tanks to mine, which got us both to about 600 points. So still pretty small games. And that was a very fast, very fun, but also very one-sided game.
No Titans?
No Titans, yeah, no. Saving that for the bigger stuff at this point.
Nice.
And we were just playing with fully painted stuff also, which is fun for a new game to be.
You guys were crushing it, man.
The one thing I'll say about that game is that small of a scale, because that's like a standard size game of that. You're looking at like 15 to 2,000 points, if not 3,000. The recommended standard game is 3,000 points. So we're playing at 600 points.
Yeah, that's way
so. The fact that I got
it's just like 40K. I mean, imagine playing a very small 500 point what do you call it? Combat patrol game. Like it doesn't scale correctly.
So in that scale, because I won initiative, I was able to get the first shot of the game, and my Kratos tanks just completely annihilated his Malkadors, which are his like super heavy tanks. Right. And had it been the opposite, his Malkadors probably would have taken out my Kratos.
Yeah.
So, the game definitely wants a few more points to it, just so you have answers to that thing, so you can take advantage of that alternating fire and things like that. It's not just I've got one heavy unit and I happen to take out your heavy unit and now you don't have an answer for that.
Right.
So in a bigger game, that issue will be resolved.
Right.
But in the small scale, it made for a very quick game, and Jody's stuff died very quickly. But it's funny because Solar Auxiliary definitely feel more like you're playing an Imperial Guard style. Orders really matter. They need this bubble of orders, and kind of positioning and daisy chaining positions of things matters a lot more. And just Marines getting into combat feel like Marines. Turns out they're really good at killing guys with t-shirts on.
Yeah. Figures.
Yeah. Just super fun.
That's awesome.
Having a great time with that. And then we did play a 1,500 point game of Legions Imperialis
at Herrick,
right? At Herrick last week. So this was me against Ivan and Craig. They teamed up to make a 1,500 point list, and I brought my Thousand Suns. And this one I wanted to check out how planes interact, because I have all my Aeronautic Imperialis planes already painted for that. So I brought 4 planes, a bunch of tanks, and a bunch of infantry. And we were, again, similar, just kind of figuring out the logistics of the game, playing through it, looking at rules as they pop up, and learning mechanics, and just had a great time with it. And everything feels really thematic and balanced.
But you don't have any rules for like psychers or anything at this point, do you?
Not yet. Yeah. Thousand Suns do have kind shields, so they get kind of an invuln save, which has, I think, come up twice in 3 games. Not a big deal. None of the Legion rules make that big of a difference unless you're playing something. The thing that stands out the most right now that I've seen is World Eaters. Like, they're just really good in close combat.
Wow.
Which is thematic for.
I got to tell you, I mean, that book, the rule book itself is incredibly thick. Yeah. Like, not only does it contain some of the history of like the Imperium and then leading up to the Horus Heresy itself and all that, but it is like, it's very high quality. It's a lot thicker than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's on
but
par
it's really
with an
well
Imperial
written.
Armor book with all the color plates you're getting in there, the artwork that's in there, the layout.
It's designed by the same people.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's Specialist Games. That's what they do now.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the Necromunda books.
Yeah. The one thing I will say, I think it's a better book to learn to play the game with than it is a reference book.
Yeah.
I definitely need to add a couple bookmarks in there. Like, here are the special rules. Here are the weapon traits.
Okay.
Here are the just basic game mechanics.
Okay.
And certain things. But
I will definitely need that.
really enjoying how the game plays so far. The amount of nuance you get in a game that is mechanically pretty simple.
Yeah.
It's very satisfying, and it's absolutely delivering on that front. So, like, absolutely loving it and can't wait to play more.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it's everything you hoped it would be.
Yeah, same.
And I hate you.
I didn't have my doubts. Because it's very based
Epic game.
on
Yeah.
Space Marine 2nd Edition.
Yeah.
Which was a great game. So, guess what? It's still a great game.
All right. And then you and I together today played a game of your Shark Shotguns versus my Tyranids, which are High Fleet. What did I name?
Puddle Stompers.
Manticore. I named them High Fleet Manticore was what I named them when I started them. So let's talk a little bit about list building, because actually I had a point I wanted to make.
Oh, yeah.
I did not buy this codex because one, not working, two, not playing Tyranids really, and I borrowed Aaron's.
Yeah.
And because of that, I did not have access to the list building capabilities of the app because I have not purchased the codex. And I have to tell you, I missed being able to use the app.
Yeah.
And some people may look at that and go, see, the app should be free. What I say is that shows you the value of that app, and the value of it is that it is that useful to me that I am willing to pay to use it. I was able to make the list in Excel. That's fine, but there's just a lot of nice features to that app, and exporting it. And then you have,
and referencing.
Also didn't have the reference cards. Yeah. So I was doing a lot of flipping back and forth in the book because I'm not playing Tyranids regularly. And I threw together a list that, let's face it, is probably not optimized very well.
That was a lot of fun.
But boy, I really do appreciate, and I understand that it has a annual subscription thing, and cool, whatever. I find that app very worth it.
Yeah, same.
Also the cards. I wish I had the cards.
Yeah, cards were saving my butt.
It was you were so fast with them compared to me flipping back and forth in the book. But that being said, it was a great game.
Yeah,
it was a great game. I feel like a lot of the changes. I haven't played Tyranids since 7th edition, where I stopped playing them because they were just so on their back foot.
Right. Yeah.
In 5th edition, early 7th edition, when they had the Turvagon spawn swarm, where you would roll 3 dice and it would spawn out Turvagants and or Termagants, and unless you rolled doubles, they didn't gum up. And so
the infinite swarm.
Yeah, you would just, I showed you how many Termagants I have. It's like, there's a reason I'm not going to go with the all new ones. Like, I have like 80 to 100 of these things.
Yep.
And I spent forever like bending their tails under a candle so that they all look a little different. And honestly, I thought they looked fine.
It looks good. Yeah.
That being said, I love the way they changed the rule now, how they just help swarms.
It's a regenerative thing now. Yeah.
Production. Super cool. So I ran two Turvagons, 2 squads of 20 Termagants. I ran 2 squads of 3 shooty Tyranid warriors, which really, I had one completely out of position, but they got me some bonus points. I had 2 squads of 10 Gene Stealers. I had a unit of 2 Carnifexes, close combat Carnifexes, and I had a single Carnifex which had shooty stuff. I brought a Screamer Killer because it's a new unit, wanted to use it. I didn't bring any other new units, and I'll talk about that in a second. So Screamer Killer, Hive Tyrant, walking Hive Tyrant with a heavy venom cannon,
Biovores and Trigon.
Biovores and Trigon.
Yeah,
that's not bad.
Yeah,
not bad from memory.
It's a lot of big bugs in a 2,000 point game.
And I took their formation, which is the giant bug formation. So, and I'm realizing I screwed myself.
You probably forgot some of those.
I forgot the bonuses
because they get better as they get wounded. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
And there's a couple very close to dying there at the end.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting. Anyway.
We'll have to repeat that.
Yeah, I'll play it again. I will say, setting up the list and then bringing it all out, I was like, I'm not really into Tyranids anymore, blah, blah, blah. But once I started playing it, I was like all in.
Yeah.
And I had such a great time that by the end of the game, I was like, okay.
I should play more Tyranids.
What do I got to buy? I'm like, no, not right now.
Yeah.
I'm staying focused where I'm staying focused. But it was a nice like change. It was a nice palate cleanser, if you will.
Yep.
From demons or chaos.
Yeah, for sure.
And boy, it was fun. Like I liked the units I had. They do struggle, as you'll hear when I talk to our guest about competitive play. They do struggle a bit to open up the cans and get to the chewy meat inside the crunchy cans.
Which is like, I think that's a fine balance though, because I had a lot of Marines on foot or on bikes or things like
they were struggling.
My army is very assault based,
and
I have a hard time taking out toughness 9 and 10 and 11 things. In close
and
combat.
that toughness 11 on the Tervagons
with 16 wounds
made such a difference.
They stuck around.
Yeah.
Longer than I wished.
Yeah. They were pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, and then once, like I learned some stuff just from that one game. I was like, oh, okay.
Yep.
I really should. I love the rule on the Carnifexes where if they move forward, if the opponent shoots at them and wounds them, they move forward again. They move forward again. It's like, oh yeah, they'll get in close to you pretty quick if you don't. And you, it's kind of like, I feel like in a way, it's almost like one of those tower defense games where you're like, you're like shooting them, but they're coming closer.
The more damage you do, the faster they come.
Yeah. So, I have to say, I really enjoyed our game today, and I'm glad we played it.
Yeah, and that was the first test drive of me playing the Sharks at that 2000 points fully Primaris list now, or new Codex updated Primaris. And it was a lot of fun. I definitely learned a few things that I would have done differently.
Yeah.
And just one tweak to the list I want to make before I run it again. But aside from that, it's pretty solid, really happy with it. It kind of did what I envisioned for it, and it was a super fun game.
Yeah, we did have to call it about halfway through. I was up on points, but I was going to lose the game by the end of it. Like it was just, I could see the momentum was slowing because I was losing the big bugs.
Yeah, my next turn would have been a big turn.
Your next turn would have hurt me bad. Yep. So it was fun to watch you roll like total crap. It's like, yeah, see how it feels. And then I'm like, oh, 2 1s. Okay, never mind.
We both had some very hot rolls and some absolute trash rolls, but
I called a couple too. I was like,
you called that 12-inch charge. Not that you needed it.
I'm going to roll 12. Boom, 12. Oh, look at that. Great game.
Yeah, super fun.
Also, like, just really got me jazzed about. I mean, we've been so Legion Imperialis and Titanicus, and really my core game is 40K.
It was good
playing
to play
today. I was like,
like,
oh yeah, that's why I like this game so much. This was super fun. So great stuff. Anything you want to add on how your Marines did? The Brutalis Dreadnought.
Brutalis was awesome. I definitely like that one.
The monster killer.
Some of the assault stuff I could have played smarter to take advantage more of. It's kind of like the jump assault intercessors. Actually, you using the Shadow of the Warp to get them to go battle shocked.
Yes,
really kind of hampered what I wanted to do with that unit.
Yeah, and that was a long shot calling me. Yeah. So what's interesting is Shadow of the Warp now is a 1 use per game ability by a creature that has Shadow of Warp, which seems to primarily be, I didn't look at all of them, but it's primarily Hive Tyrants.
Norns might have them.
Norns probably have. That's what I was thinking, like the Emissary or something. But man, you use it once per game, and you basically force during your command phase or the opponent's command phase them to roll leadership checks for all of their units, every unit on the board.
Everything on the board takes a shock.
I mean, that was, and I got like 2 or 3 units that broke, and that caused you to not fall back, because if you did, you would have had to take a what do they call it?
Desperate escape test.
Desperate escape test, which could have potentially wiped out your captain.
Right.
That would have been amazing.
Which is because they have the Hammer of Wrath when they're coming in for a charge, and the real reason I have that as the Stormlance formation, even though Stormlance is really probably better for Space Wolves that have more mounted units, but also want to assault. But really what it lets me do is it lets me advance and charge, or fall back and charge. So that unit wants to go and hit, kind of weather the storm of the return attacks, and then in my next turn fall back and then charge again. So they're getting that hammer of wrath, they're getting the charge bonuses, things like that.
Yeah,
taking advantage of those captain free stratagems.
I took the Crusher Stampede. Yeah, that's what it's called.
Yeah,
that was fun.
That was good.
That was cool.
Yeah, so I definitely learned a few things of just tactically what I do different, and that one small tweak to the list that I think will just make it more viable in more ways. But
we'll have to re-rack it.
Super fun game. Yeah,
and do this again.
Definitely.
Every time you and I play Tyranids versus Space Marines, it's just a super memorable game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like a long shot call, the Shadow and the Warp thing, but I was like, I'm just going to do it. I mean, now's the time to do it. Because I thought if this causes him a problem,
yeah,
he's got the only reason I was holding off was I wanted you to get the Terminators onto the board and the other things out of the assault guys out of the vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I was like, I just need to do it now. Yeah. And it worked.
It only made a difference for that one unit, but it made a huge difference for that unit because they didn't get their impact hits because I didn't fall out of combat. Yep. Everything that targeted those, because you had two big bugs in that fight.
It ended up killing that unit in the long run.
It did. Yeah. It also prevented me, because everything I was shooting into those, because you can still shoot monsters in combat, I was at -1 to do so because they were engaged instead of free, which made a difference on a bunch of my
that is very true too. I didn't even think about
probably
that.
Would have wiped him out. So yeah,
that's very true too.
Realistically, I probably should have just gone for it and taken those desperate
and just lost a guy or two. Yeah. Although you lose them on a 1 or 2, which is if it was just 1, it's like okay. 1 or 2, it's like
when they're multi-win models just disappearing, it hurts. So yep.
Yeah. I thought that was a lot of fun. The other thing I'll mention real quick is the ability of Synapse, which now basically anything within Synapse is rolling their leadership tests on 3d6 is huge.
Yeah.
Like huge.
Yeah.
Like there's no fearless in the game, but that comes pretty close.
Yep.
So yeah.
It keeps you around.
Yeah. So that was pretty fun.
The hive mind directs.
Yeah. So great game.
Nice. Yeah.
Thanks for bringing your Shark on.
Absolutely. It's always a good time.
All right. Well, let's do this. Let's take a break. We'll come back and then we'll start talking about how Marines have been updated in the latest Codex and kind of where they sit and what we learn going forward. All right. We'll be right back. All right, and we're back, and we are launching into our first section where we're going to go over kind of updates to the Space Marine Codex at this point.
Yeah.
And where we've gone this edition, 10th edition around.
Yeah.
And Josh, you were tasked with kind of doing all this work. So where are we looking lore wise?
Yeah, so lore wise, there's not a ton of across the board updates. Space Marines have been Space Marines and have been Space Marines for a while.
Are they still Space Marines?
They are still Space Marines, just now Primaris.
Yeah,
largely.
In fact, it seems like everything's just Space Marines now, right?
There are still a few firstborn things that are in the book. What was interesting is that there are a couple things that they do call out in lore that do not exist in the Codex anymore. So things like ironclad dreadnoughts don't exist in the book anymore, but they are still mentioned in the lore. So they're still part of the greater kind of Space Marine history and periphery.
Yeah,
but not in the book itself. And there's a couple other things that I also noticed. Like I don't think that's in the Codex anymore. But they've mentioned it.
It's probably because they copy pasted the lore.
Some of it, I'm sure some of it.
But I bet they look through it. I mean, the editor looks through it and verifies.
Yeah,
And
just because it's not in the game doesn't mean it's like it is a Legends unit. I'm assuming at this point, so it still exists in a model form.
There you go.
Lore wise, the biggest update is the two biggest things I'll call it here is one, the Leviathan campaign. So which is spawned off the fourth Tyrannic War of coming in and Leviathan coming in from multiple directions.
Yeah.
And this is that great video of Gilliman talking about, or was it actually? Yeah,
it's Gilliman.
Yeah. Yep. Saying like, we have this, we have this, we have this, we have this. And then the subtext is it's
none of it's enough. Yeah. I love that. That was well written.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
Because it's such a propaganda thing from when you hear it until you get to that end part. It's like, hey, it's a Games Workshop thing. You got to read that last paragraph. That's right. And it's not enough.
That's right.
Yeah. Second big lore thing that was the most interesting for me is talking about the restructuring of the not chapters, but the I'm totally blanking on the name right now.
Legion.
No, within companies.
Oh, companies within each
that.
chapter. Yeah.
So instead of it being like there's still, this is the scout company, this is the your Terminator first company. These are your battle companies. These are the reserve companies. That is still a thing, but the organization of those is very different because of the Primaris units that have been introduced now.
Interesting.
So it's no longer as regimented as, hey, you get 8 tactical squads, a Devastator squad, an assault squad, whatever. And now it's very specifically, you get battle line squads, close support squads, heavy squads, things like that. And it's more battle line, battle role specific and not unit specific for how those.
So Gilman's writing addendums to the
and there are
what's
actually
it called? The
Codexes.
Codex Astartes. Yeah.
There are lots of mentions of Codex Astartes and how some chapters never wanted to follow it, how some chapters do follow it, how there have been lots of addendums to that.
Sure.
So they do mention Codex Astartes and some updates that have happened to it and how divergent chapters have modified that. And even chapters that don't follow it still see it kind of as almost a religious kind of icon.
Listen, as Captain Titus in the Space Marine video game said, it's really just a guideline.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That sent Aaron Dembski through the roof when he heard that. He's like, just a guideline. That's not what it is.
It's like parlaying for pirates, right?
Yeah.
It's really just guidelines.
That's right.
So the kind of the big lore update is just the restructuring of the companies,
Okay.
And just being less stringent on the units that are. So it's a little bit more broad now. And then the fourth Tyrannic War, or the kind of big updates.
Yeah.
And the Codex itself, I should say, doesn't really go that deep into the fourth Tyrannic War. That's more from the
that's kind of in the Leviathan Big Book and the subsequent.
And the Crusade
if you didn't
book for
buy
that.
the Big Book, you could get the Crusade there.
So that's kind of covers the lore. Model wise, surprisingly, Space Marines are a pretty robust line. So there's not a lot of new units in this book. Mm-hmm. The biggest ones that we have are the jump pack captain. So this captain with jump pack. The assault intercessors with jump packs are obviously a very brand new unit, replacing existing assault Marines.
Yeah, I've been waiting for those forever. Because assault Marines were always one of my favorite.
They're so fun. The maneuverability, flexibility. Mm-hmm. They just look cool. Very happy with those. And then we did have this in the Index with Leviathans released, but the Apothecary Biologus is one of the additional new units to this kind of codex. So not a whole lot of new units. We've definitely seen a lot of paring down and combining of things. So most of the firstborn units in this codex have been removed at this point.
Okay.
They've been consolidated into there's just one entry, and it's kind of assuming the Primaris version of it. So like there's no longer a lieutenant and a Primaris lieutenant. Now there's
just a
lieutenants in different armor types, but all of Primaris variety.
Yeah, it's very it's interesting to see it finally kind of coming to fruition. As I've said for a long time, this has been or was a 10-year plan for Games Workshop to phase out the old Marines. That's not like I know that from the horse's mouth. Like this is exactly what it was intended to do, because they were cognizant of the fact that people had large Marine armies and they didn't want to just like dump on you all of a sudden, like
just invalidate them overnight.
Everything's invalid, so it's kind of ripping the Band-Aid off slowly.
Yeah. And there are all those units still exist in Legends for the most part. I can't say all of them. Most of them, I should say, still exist as Legends. Yeah. The three kind of standouts that still remain as firstborn Marines in this codex are tactical squads, still there, still a thing. Vanguard veterans, so jump pack Vanguard veterans are still small Marines, and then Devastator squads.
Interesting.
So just those are kind of the only three units that still remain as firstborn.
So, it sounds like they just haven't done the models for those.
And they, I'm curious if the Desolation squads end up becoming the new Devastators, so they might go the wayside. Obviously, now we have the jump pack, assault intercessors, so the Vanguard veterans might go away. I wouldn't be surprised to see them go. Yeah. And tactical Marines have largely been replaced by one of the four flavors of intercessors, infiltrators, and cursors, whatever.
All a bunch of eyes.
All the eyes. Yeah. All the eyes. So that kind of covers us for models. Not a lot there because the Marine line is so robust, and they have had so many Primaris releases over a period of time, the last couple editions,
right? Like it's
in that 10-year phase.
Yeah, I think you got a couple with Leviathan and a few little add-ons there. Yeah. I think the jump pack guys are the big win.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think in terms of looks and filling a gap that was missing, that's a big one. And seeing yours on the table today, and yeah, I know they're all pirouetting off a rock here and there. And I understand where you're going to change that. And I agree with you. They look so good.
Yeah.
They look so
just
good.
that little bit of extra bulk from the pack and just dynamics of, arms and assault. Like they look like they're in a charge. And,
Yeah.
And I think,
But, man, the thing I constantly marvel at with the Primaris Marines is the sharpness and crispness of the details on, like your guys. I could look at them and you were like, oh, don't take out, you were across the table from me and I killed a few and you're like, okay, well, don't take a plasma gun guy. I'm like, well, that's a plasma gun. That's a plasma gun.
Yeah. Very easy to read.
It's so clear. And even though they were unpainted and not like we had a bunch of unpainted stuff on the table today because
that's
we're in that phase at the moment.
Yeah.
But they were just so crisp and clear. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
They're beautiful.
Yep. Absolutely love the sculpts. Very excited to get the actual jump jets part of that going. Cause then they'll be, even have a little bit more presence to them.
All right.
And just fun to paint. Rules wise, the biggest rules change. There's always been a lot of updates to how individual, data cards kind of play out. So there's been lots of little tweaks that, captains all do this little, everything has its kind of, not only your stats, but you have your one flavor of unit rule to some degree, whether it's a character joining and adding that rule or your unit gets this reroll ones when something's close to an objective or whatever. So there are lots of little things that haven't existed in, say, previous codexes, and that's just unit by unit. So there's lots of little things. The only kind of broad sweeping rule is there is Oath a Moment. This is the one kind of special rule for the army. And this has been changed from the index
original version.
Yeah, which would give you choose one target in your command phase and you get to reroll all wounds and hit rolls against that one unit. Now you are only rerolling hit rolls against that unit. So it has you've lost the wound reroll. And I think time will tell whether that needed to happen or not. But it obviously makes a difference to some degree. We'll see if I don't think, and this actually is mentioned in the interview I do with my competitive player interview, which just blanked on his name real quick.
That's all right.
He was saying that, Marines they're in a good place, but they're not necessarily top tier. They're like kind of solid middle plus. And will be interesting to see if that actually needed to happen for.
It was, my discussion as well. It was with Matt Evans.
Yeah. Cass was the guy I was talking about.
And I asked him, where is it? He goes, well, I think they're solid upper middle at the moment. I go, how do you think they're going to be in a year? And he goes, well, early codexes tend to, tend to drop.
To see how codex creep happens in this edition.
Yeah. I mean, if time is if history is any reading on it, they'll probably drop a bit.
Yeah.
So the Oath of Moment, I think, is a really interesting ability for them. It is on the other side of the fence, like when you're having it directed at you, it is nerve-wracking. You're like, oh, well, that unit's about to get deleted.
I think it'd feel a lot worse if I was rerolling ones against it.
That's what I was going to say.
Sorry, not ones, but wounds.
What's interesting is you said that like right off the bat. You're like, oh, well, there's a lot of rerolling of dice here. But it's still not to the degree it was like even 8th edition.
I'm not rolling a crazy amount of dice.
8th and 9th, like especially when you had these units that were all aura units that were just causing rerolls. Oh, well, he's near a lieutenant, so he rerolls all. It's like, man.
Yep.
They have eliminated a lot of that. And it's interesting that some of that has all migrated to if you're attacking an enemy that's on an objective. It makes it harder to hold objectives.
Right, yeah. But you're also a bigger threat because that's how you're scoring points and winning
games. Right.
So.
That's right. So it's like that extra bit of determination.
Balance, though.
Yeah. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I like that.
I didn't think there was too much re-rolling in the game today.
No, it honestly felt
there were times where I was like, don't I get a re-roll? Well, I know re-roll.
Spend that command point.
I don't want to re-roll all this.
So I think next we can jump into the force organization, which really for this are the detachments. So we still have the Gladius detachment, which is Same detachment we know and love from the Index. Yeah. And I think it's fair to say that it was a solid detachment in the Index, and I think that carries over to the Codex now.
Yeah.
Like I think it's still a very viable choice. This gives you your various doctrines, so Devastator, Assault, Tacticals, and those each trigger once a phase, and you're able to, and it's a more flexible kind of your generic Ultramarines flexible tactical detachment, and it's great for that, and it does it well. Next up, we have the Anvil Siege Task Force, which is going to be more ranged weapons become heavy. So, and if you already had the heavy word, I'm trying to remember now. If you remain stationary, you add 1 to the wound roll.
Yeah.
So you're +1 to hit if you don't move because of heavy, and if you already had heavy, then you're also getting +1 to wound, which would be great against something like the list you had today. Yeah. If I was playing more of the siege force there, which I think is very thematic for trying to kill tanks, trying to kill armor, trying to kill big bugs. If anybody has fortifications, anything like that, it's very thematic. I'd say all of these, I think, land very thematically in the special thing that they do.
I think, it's interesting. Are there 7 Marine ones?
There are 6.
There's 6. Yeah. There's 6 Tyranid ones.
Oh no, there are 7.
And I thought it was interesting that there weren't more, and I think that was intentional.
Yeah,
because then it becomes a little too diluted. I thought 6 was a healthy number, especially as I was working through the Tyranid Codex. Like I felt like sometimes too much choice is paralyzing.
Yep.
This was not too much choice.
Yeah. And I think each one, everything that I've seen, this is true in the Marines, this is true in Necrons, true in Tyranids from what I've seen of those. I haven't looked at the Mechanicus stuff much yet, but each one, you choose what you want your army to do, and it does that one thing very well. And it's very thematic in how
especially when you remember the rule.
Builds to it. We'll have to re-rack that game. So the Anvil Iron Storm Spearhead gets you kind of a reroll to hit, reroll to wound, a reroll damage roll, something like that. It's 1 reroll per one of those things, which is just kind of, you're going to have more reliability. So it's just kind of more slow and steady, very reliable in your shots. So being able to reroll a las cannon miss or damage roll. How many ones did I roll for my las cannon damage?
A lot.
D6 plus 1.
I love it.
Roll the 1. Okay, here we go. So that I think is going to be a very popular competitive thing of just having that consistency with the built-in rerolls. Firestorm also going to be very popular. This is getting all of your ranged weapons have the assault ability, and units within 12 inches add 1 to the strength of the attack. So you're just +1 strength across the board for stuff that's up close. So this is very good for flamers, pistols.
Super thematic for what it's doing. And that's the thing I did notice with all of the Tyranid ones, like for whatever it was called, and we'll get to mine, but whatever it was called, like it did that thing.
Yeah.
It was like, and what's nice is it doesn't do that thing and detract from other stuff.
Yes.
It just adds to that thing.
Yeah.
Where you would feel like, okay, what's the catch? It's like, nope, there's no catch. You just get that extra stuff with this select thing. Yeah.
This is your one special thing you get to do. And
it's really, I really like it.
Yeah. It's a good system.
I hope they keep doing this and they don't need to add like a dozen more. Like let's keep it.
Yeah, I think
keep it simple, stupid, right?
I think this round of codexes, most of them you're going to see 5 to 7 or so.
I think I think they're pretty much shooting for 6. So
next up we've got the Stormlance Task Force. So this is what I brought today. So
until you get to 1,000 Suns, and there needs to be like 10.
You got to have 9 for each.
One, and you have to have 1 for each discipline.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. I'm curious if they do any of that, like the Corvidae.
I don't know.
Like different types to focus on that. Stormlance Task Force is reroll. You are able to advance and charge, and then also fall back and charge. So this was very fun for me. It's definitely more of the enhancements and stratagems are geared towards mounted units, which I obviously only have the one mounted unit with Outriders and Chaplain and ATB.
It's pretty awesome though.
It's a fun unit.
The Chaplain on the bike is cool looking.
I love that model. Yeah,
that's a good one.
It's definitely one of my favorites. So that one's just been very fun. Good for an assault army, just being able to advance and charge or fall back and then charge again. Yeah. Honestly, a good option. So as the Sharks thematically just playing very assault heavy, that one naturally gravitated to what I wanted to do with it. Then we have the Vanguard Spearhead, which are the Shadow Masters. This is the more kind of Raven Guard oriented one. And this is everything targeted from more than 12 inches away is -1 to hit with stealth, essentially, and gets cover against the attack, which is essentially stealth, not stealth.
Right.
Because there are some rules that will negate stealth, which this one does not. So. And that's really good if you just want to keep things safe, or you want to kind of do more kind of denials and kind of just a bunch of small unit shenanigans.
Trickery.
Yeah, just keeping stuff safe from more than 12 inches away. -1 across the board for everything. Especially if you're playing a shooting army, you want to just kind of stand back and shoot, or move and shoot, and kind of keep playing in that 12-inch bubble. And lastly, we have the First Company Task Force, which is the extremist level threat. Once per battle, the Oath of Moment rerolls wounds as well. So if you're going with a lot of Terminators or veterans, things like that,
Be heavy.
the one turn that you're like, I get to reroll all my hits and all my wounds to get this one thing, like that one thing's really gonna die.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You know what's interesting is we have this under Force Organization, and it really is like the Force org chart is gone.
Right.
Like the old like 1 HQ, 3 tactical, 2 tactical plus however many you want, all that's gone now.
Yep.
To a much more, I think, flexible system.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You
need a character.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. And you can't take more than 3 of any of these, it's fascinating because this was outside of the index cards. Like this was the first go around I had it building a force from the Codex, and I found it to be like fairly straightforward. Like I was like,
what do you want?
I towards the end of 9th, I was like, how the hell do you build?
Which detachment am I
What am I doing? And now it's just
how
like
many command point penalties am I paying?
it felt very, and it felt like very like just pick one.
Yep.
Yeah, oh, cool. Oh,
what do you want to do?
Done.
What do you want them to do? Lean into.
And then I saw the big one. I'm like, I'll just take a bunch of big monsters.
Yep.
All right, I'll do that
Super
one. That
fun.
sounds fun.
Yeah. It was fun.
But several of them appealed to me. Like it was like, oh, this invasion one is kind of cool. And so I mean, it wasn't like I think the neat thing about it, taking this approach, is you're not locked into. It's as I think about this, is a smart on Games Workshop's part too, because you can use the same army, play it a little differently. Oh, but to really do that, you're going to want to add a couple of these kinds of units.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it does have this kind of, well, if you want to play it like this, you really want to shift your army this direction.
Yeah.
Right.
You can make anything fit, but like I said,
but to take advantage of it.
The Stormlance force that I was using, really more of the stratagems and enhancements are really geared towards units that are mounted.
Yeah.
And the fact that I only have that one, I am hamstringing myself a little bit on stratagems I'm able to use. I'm fine with that. Obviously, I'm not playing competitively, so it's fun. And the few that I can, and there's some that aren't mounted requirements, and they were just very useful. But then when the mounted ones are able to take effect on that unit, they're awesome.
Yeah.
So I could only see that having more options is probably better, but it was still fun.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. All right. So that's your force org and how it's looking in the Codex. So you had a guest interview with
Cass.
Yeah. So why don't we hear a little bit about how they're playing competitively as we talk with Cass?
Yeah. That's
you talk with Cass a little bit.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, and I'm joined here with Kassra, competitive Marine player. Why don't you give us a little intro to yourself and kind of the brief background of your nerd accolades?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Josh. I am Cass Hushadar. I have started playing 40K with 2nd edition. And, I did have a brief little stint where I went into the fantasy world and then they destroyed the old world and I came back. But really my modern competitive history was about 2 years ago. I had a casual play group that I played with, and I think we were doing a Crusade League, and I flawless victoried the entire league.
Okay.
So my friends were kind of like, stop, just don't. And so
competitively narrative.
Let's try competitively competitive. So I started going to tournaments, realizing I was getting my teeth kicked in for a while. And then I started being a coaching student with Art of War. And all of a sudden things started turning around. They started clicking. My first army was what I revitalized into with the new edition, which is my Ultramarines. I became quite known for painting my Ultramarines, and I was doing really well there. But then I started doing well with the game. Eventually got the invite to join the Art of War ITC team, and yeah, 2 years in a row competitive playing. I made it to the Games Workshop World Championships. So I've been having a lot of fun, and really, the competitive gears have kind of clicked, and I'm here to stay, I think.
Nice. That's fantastic. And both those years was with your Ultramarines?
With my Ultramarines, yeah.
Oh,
so 9th edition Ultramarines did a lot of good for me.
Fantastic, man. You're definitely the guy to have here, as we're way more casual these days on our side of things. So, yeah.
Well, and I know both sides of that fence, Josh.
Perfect. Yeah. So, not only you've also played in more of just the kind of larger U.S. events with Tacoma Open. You were in Atlanta recently. That's correct, right?
Correct. Yeah. And I will be at Vegas for LVO. I will be very jet lagged because I'll be in London that week for work, literally flying straight to. So
yeah, that's a big switch of time zones on you there. Plus jet lag.
I'm hoping it just goes so far that I'm just fine. That's the hope.
Just running on fuel and adrenaline there. So.
I mean, it's LVO. That's kind of what happens by the end of it anyway.
Yeah, just on fumes. Okay, well, let's jump into competitive talk of Codex Space Marines. Let me just start with kind of your initial thoughts on the book and how you feel it stacks up and just where it sits. Yeah.
So I think it's a really strong book. I think they have done a good job of not doing what we've all kind of expected them to do, which was Codex creep right up front. I mean, we are early, but I like what they've done because they've added a lot of interesting options in the Codex for everyone. So as an Ultramarine, I'm no longer just locked into one play style. I can actually play a Vanguard detachment or a Firestorm detachment. And I think that at first it really bothered me, to be honest, just as a diehard Ultramarines player. But I've kind of wrapped my head around the flexibility that it provides. And I think what this does is it creates a situation where there's different play styles and different units can make more sense in one or another detachment. And I think that's added a lot of longevity to the book and a lot of depth that we hadn't seen previously. And I mean, we've seen it within other new codices as well. So I think it's in a really good place. I think it's strong, but I think it's not overpowered and there isn't any obvious choice, which I both simultaneously hate and love.
Yep. Totally see that and agree. Do you have a preferred detachment that you're playing on the competitive scene?
Currently, I am playing the Vanguard detachment.
Okay.
Infantry jank is something I've loved and was very much in line with my 9th edition playstyle. To be honest, I was struggling with my Gladius list, and then my good friend John Lennon tapped me on the shoulder a few weeks before the World Champs and shared his list with me. And that's what I've been playing since. And just the amount of different tools that you get in a list that kind of don't care about your opponent's game plan. It's been really fun. It's been a really fun list to play with.
Nice. Yeah, I was actually just rereading that detachment yesterday, trying to think if that would be a better fit. I'm running my Sharkadons as a just hyper aggressive close assault force, very melee focused. So I'm actually running Stormlands, even though I don't have that many mounted units, so I can get that assault or the advance and charges off there and try to maximize that as possible. Obviously not going to be as competitive, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun to play against. So, but
and very, very fluffy.
yeah, exactly. Yep. Got my scouts and got my assault. So let's get in it.
Perfect.
Awesome. So within not only just Vanguard, but the Codex as a whole, are there any standout units for you that you feel are maybe doing a little bit more work or just kind of have gravitated towards a favorite of yours?
Yeah, I will say, and I say this very nervously because I think both of these units are about to get a little bit of a slap. But one thing I have seen as a staple in every competitive Space Marine list that's done well is Inceptors.
Yeah.
That 3-inch deep strike is phenomenal. They're a relatively cost-effective unit.
Yeah.
And, I love both loadouts. Like, I don't have a favorite. The plasma is great in certain situations. But, man, when you roll a bunch of 6s and you're shooting those bolters, Overwatch, forget about it. It's amazing. So, like in the Vanguard list, I'm running, and I'm currently painting a lot of these, but I am running 2 6-man plasmas and 1 3-man bolter. And they're phenomenal in the Vanguard detachment. But even outside of that, I've seen them used very heavily in Firestorm, where they get that bonus strength for being up close.
Right.
I've used them to great success in Gladius just to score me points. So I think they're a very, very versatile unit that kind of, no matter which way you're going, had tremendous value. So I am nervous that we're going to see a points hike or something with those guys.
I can all but guarantee that is coming, unfortunately.
Yeah.
No inside knowledge, of course, but
No, me neither. I do have to, I know I'm wearing this jersey. I'm just on the team. I'm not part of the team that makes the content. So no idea, but I highly suspect.
Yeah. Their ability to achieve secondaries relatively well from their mobility, that deep strike, the 3-inch deep strike is also
well, and lest we forget lone op hunting, right? So a lot of people, I've seen the trend kind of die off, but a lot of people were relying on lone op characters to hold, that scary objective that's in the open.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool story, bro, but I'm dropping Inceptors 3 inches from you and blowing your head off. Yeah. So those kind of use cases, plus in units in detachments like Vanguard, where you could pull them back into deep strike, it's terrifying, because it does what the typical competitive Eldar list was doing to people, which is you never know where the threat's actually going to be. So you kind of end up this paranoid mess, and you're not even playing 40K anymore. So I think Inceptors really kind of add that insecurity that we were seeing against Eldar quite a bit.
Yeah. Nice. They it'll show you where my mindset is for Marines and 40K right now, and that I know they are one of those go-to units, and yet I still just sold mine to somebody, so I have 0 now. I just moving on, different direction. I do have the Eldar that'll be coming out later this year, so I obviously have that for any competitive urges, and Necrons are always pretty solid for me. So Marines are just fun, and
Necrons are cool. There's a cool list in there.
Well, so let's actually pivot into that direction now. Comparing Marines to any of the newer codexes, you mentioned you've played against both the new Tyranid book and the new Necron book. How do you feel Marines are stacking up against those codexes?
I feel like it would probably, if I had to stat rank them, Necrons would be number 1, Marines number 2, Tyranids number 3, and let me be very clear. I think the margin is very small on every single one of these. You could put it in any order. I think as long as you defended your case, you could be right. I think that Tyranids also, much like I said about Space Marines, there is no one right path. There's no one obvious better selection. So, I've seen people play big bugs and have a lot of fun with it and do really well. I've seen people play the endless horde and they seem to be having fun. I wouldn't personally. That's a lot of models to move around, and typically you don't even see those guys roll the dice for their shots, especially if you're playing in a clocked environment. But they're having fun. They're doing well. So there is that sort of versatility, and we're seeing it with the Necrons too. And I think kind of right off the bat with Necrons, everyone was like, Canoptic Core, yeah. And yes, you can do some pretty gnarly things with that list. But a good friend of mine played what I would call the Necron equivalent of the Vanguard detachment that I'm playing into me. And I got to say, this is a person I've been playing 40K with since we were little, since high school era or even before. And it was like a fencing match, because the hyper, I forget the name, but the warpy Necrons, with multiple Satan was just this nightmare of where are you going to be? And they have the 3-inch deep strike strat, right? So we're both picking up models and putting them down. And it was a very long game. We played right up to the end of it. I lost by 1 point.
Oh,
and
wow.
I think part of that is like the Satan just don't die.
Yeah.
But they can be right where you need them to. So I think that's kind of where, through my very subjective anecdotal experience, that's why I rank it the way I do.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. The follow-up for that being, these are all early codexes. You did mention codex creep a little bit earlier. Do you think we're going to see that a more traditional codex creep happen throughout the rest of this edition? Or do you think that all these books kind of having decent internal balance and external balance to each other so far is going to kind of carry through the edition?
I would love to say that I think it's going to carry through right to the end. I don't think that's possible. And I say that knowing that the GW team has the best intentions.
Yeah.
And we've seen them get better. But they're only human, and with the various combinations that you can come up with all of them, all of these sub-factions kind of being opened up, I think there's inevitably going to be combinations they don't think are going to have that much of an impact. But then you put it in the hands of a competitive player, and they come up with something that you just didn't see. What I will say is I do have the confidence that will be addressed promptly. Yeah. We've seen it time and time again. Like I mean, think back to 9th edition with like Harlequins, they eventually got there, but they did call out like, hey, we see the problem, we're going to address it. And before anyone hangs me because of Eldar, let me just say I have beaten Eldar many times with my Gladius Space Marine list, let alone my Vanguard. There are ways where the community also will adapt and make certain lists solved. And so I think that between that and between Games Workshop, slowly but surely chugging away and making sure that the balance is there, I'm confident that the codexes will remain in a reasonable power band. There's always going to be winners and losers, but I think we're in a good place.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. The next kind of follow-up for me is with Marines. You are playing Ultramarines, so that was going to be one of my questions. How do you feel that they stack up compared to the kind of more divergent chapters of Marines, Space Wolves, Blood Angels, etc., given that they have the access to the same detachments, but then they have some more specialized units on top of that they also have available?
So I do think that the specialized chapters have a bit of a leg up right now in general, broad strokes. That being said, so many of my combinations that I'm using rely on Ultramarine specific characters. I wish I could say I was still running Guilliman. It was a thing I became known for in 9th. Even when he was bad, I ran him competitively and did way better than anyone should. I haven't been able to replicate that in 10th. But I'm using Calgar. I'm using Uriel Ventress. I think that's a pretty common competitive combo. But, there are certain things like Blood Angels with Death Company and Sanguinary Guard, or, Dark Angels with their myriad of special units, where it does seem to be a bit of an unfair advantage. What I'm really curious to see is when those specialized chapters get their actual codex, if they still keep access to the Codex Marine detachments. I'm very curious to see that. I could see them going either way with it, but I think as long as they have options to do either, they're going to be the stronger factions, generally speaking, competitively.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Which that reminds me. So the next two questions kind of can tie together, but first I'm going to start with. Actually, I'll tie them together. How do you feel that the Codex is stacking up now against the 9th edition Codex and the Index? And how do you feel about chapter tactics as a whole, kind of being removed from the book, especially for successor chapters, or even Ultramarines themselves? Like, you have the detachments, but you don't have that kind of special flavor, which the other books are bringing something to.
Well, I will say I had kind of formulated something that worked in ninth with my Ultramarines. And I am a little bit like I actually like the Ultramarines. I know a lot of people don't, but it was important to me that I was running Ultramarines, not just, in fact, like when Art of War went to Kansas City teams, I won't name names, but one of my teammates was like, "Hey, Cass, have you heard of Blue Iron Hands?" And the other three basically shut him down and said, "Nope, Cass is an Ultramarines player. He knows what he knows. We're going with it." And actually, what I brought to the table caught a lot of people off guard because of that chapter tactic.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, even now, like 2 games ago, I was playing with my friend and I'm in combat. And I'm like, "No problem. I fall back and shoot." Oh, wait. No, I don't. So it's been a lot to kind of beat that muscle memory out of me. But
yeah,
I think I can see why they did it. And I think that provided that these specialized chapters do move away from having the same options that Codex chapters have, I think that makes sense. Because you know what? People were doing Blue Iron Hands anyway. So now you could just be Ultramarines playing Ironstorm. I think that's a more eloquent way, and it does reduce this one sort of inequality that Marine players faced versus other factions. I played Drukhari as well, and no one ever tried to pigeonhole me because of my paint scheme. Whereas when I'm playing Ultramarines, people get sassy about if I'm playing, one chapter or another. And I think with Marines being known as the army as a subscription service,
right. Yeah.
it's hard enough to keep up with. Like, I have a massive collection of painted Ultramarines, and boy howdy, I have quite the queue to paint in 2 weeks for LVO, right? So that's just how it goes because things are ever changing. Yeah. So I think removing that one variable makes a lot of sense, despite my kind of, my sad feelings about losing my special Ultramarines rules.
Yeah, nice. And just following up on that, with the evolution from the index to the codex, how do you feel things stacked up? Obviously, we got more detachment options and some kind of opened up. Some people will call them side grades. Some people just say the way things are working are just a little bit different. How do you feel how things have landed?
Yeah, and I think the biggest sort of determining factor for me is that Gladius still works, and it works well. I have a lot of fellow Space Marine players who I have a lot of respect for that are being very successful with Gladius and still innovating within what we've had since the beginning of the edition. So I think that's very telling. The fact that, yes, there are all these other options and all of them look good. And depending on your play style, go find your home, right?
Yeah.
I know a lot of guys are having a lot of fun with Ironstorm. I played it a couple times. Wasn't for me. Fantastic detachment, very strong. But the fact that I can go pick up a Gladius list and still do well.
Yeah.
And play Warhammer with, what my casual friends would consider a typical Space Marine army. Well balanced. I got a couple of vehicles. I got some infantry. That still works in a competitive setting too. It doesn't have to just be stealthy infantry jank or, very skewy lists, right? And I think that's very telling about the index evolved. And yeah, specifically, we got some side grades. I do think losing the rerolls to wound on oath in the long term will sort of show to be a bit overkill. Space Marines weren't doing phenomenally, even with that. But who knows? That's something that can be in the future in balance updates added back in if needed. And if not, well, I would be happy to be wrong and proven that it was never needed in the first place.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and if nothing else, they'll get a little point discount, and you just get more bodies for more stealth infantry jank.
Exactly. And don't forget those scouts. They're back, baby.
I got 3 units of them and just happy to rebase 2 of them yesterday for tomorrow's games.
Good, man. Yeah, no, I got basing rings on 3 units.
Nice. Perfect. Well, I want to thank you again, Cass, for joining us here, and I wish you all the best of luck in your competitive 40K exploits in this 2024 year we got going here.
Thanks so much, Josh. This was definitely a bucket list item, so thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, and hopefully we can touch base with you again in a year or so and see how Marines are treating you and how they've stacked up against the future Codex releases to come.
Sounds good. I'll be around.
Awesome.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks again.
All right. So we're back.
And thanks again to Cass for lending some time and some insights. And good luck to you in this coming year's tournament.
Yeah, I'm going to pretend like I have now heard that.
Yeah.
Not when I edit the show. What a great interview.
Yeah.
Good job, Josh.
Thanks.
I hope.
My voice still sounded terrible, but made it work.
No, but we do appreciate both of our guests taking the time to come in and talk with us about this, because this is not my forte. More Josh's than mine, but what we were playing, Shell and I were playing Black Rose Wars, a board game for those who don't know, where you're playing wizards trying to take over this thing. And Shell and I really liked the game. And then the one time we brought Josh to play it, Josh just creamed us like out of the starting gate. And we're like, Josh is very good at this kind of game. Josh picks up games very quick.
I get games.
Yeah. Not me. Like Legion of Imperialis, I'm going to be much better off playing a game and then going, okay, got it, than reading it. Like I'll read it, but it's not, I don't retain it like you do.
That's also a game that I have no need or desire to like overly optimize anything. Like I just want to bring a bunch of stuff and have fun with it, and it'll be great. So,
all right.
One thing Cass called out there in that interview that I'm going to call attention to here, since you haven't heard it yet, is we're talking about the various flavors of divergent chapters. So Blood Angels, Space Wolves, things like that. And right now, as it stands, they get access to all of these same detachments plus Blood Angel special rule, Space Wolf special rule.
Interesting.
So in almost every case, they are Space Marines +1. Like they are doing Space Marines better because they do something a little bit in addition to everything else that Space Marines already do on top of that. So as it stands right now, we'll see if they get supplemental books, like if Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Space Wolves, etc., end up getting their own books where they have kind of their own detachments, so they're doing their own specialized things. Well, it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out.
Probably it supersedes what was in the previous book, and now it's this. Yeah.
So they probably wouldn't. They would likely just be detachments that are unique to those chapters, plus some stratagems, enhancements, things like that.
Yeah.
But and maybe a different special rule compared to Oath of Moment, like they'll do Hunt the Fallen or whatever for Dark Angels.
Sure.
So it'll be curious to see how that plays out, because as of right now, that all the other chapters do feel like they have a slight leg up on just your kind of vanilla Marines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That actually, just to digress for a moment, one thing I did forget to mention was, with Doug passing and us getting ready to start auctioning off his armies and that kind of stuff. One of the armies I was going to keep for the longest time was his Mantis Warriors that he was painting, because they're just freaking gorgeous. Yeah. Like he's just, and
they were Sons of Medusa.
Or Sons of Medusa, not Mantis Warriors. The Sons of Medusa, which are just, he's done such a good job on them. And as I was kind of looking at him, I was like thinking about it, and I was going through his stuff because I was shipping off some of his Blood Bowl stuff to Anthony. Anthony bought his Blood Bowl stuff, and I came across all his Space Wolves that he was making, and he doesn't have nearly as much as he did of the Sons of Medusa. Like he has like maybe 2 squads and like a Thunderwolf Cav squad done.
Yeah. And
I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep these instead.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm keeping those is because Doug, and he has a video for it. I'll provide a link to the videos. You'll get a real sense of Doug's sense of humor in the video. It's long, but Doug was specifically making Space Wolves to play against my Thousand Sons, like opposed to, he was kind of feeling like he was falling out of Warhammer for a bit, and he really wanted to get back into it. And he was like, but I don't know what I want to do. And then he was making this army specifically because I had Thousand Sons. He was like, what?
The old rivalry.
Yeah. So I thought, well, I'll take those, and I doubt I'll ever really add to them. I just don't want to do Marines. I have always liked Space Wolves, but I just don't want to do them. But I felt like yeah, this is like spiritually more the kind of thing. So I decided to keep those, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
And they look great too.
yeah, your talk about Space Wolves just reminded me of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, they do look great. Good job on those too.
Yes, he did.
And I have his recipes for that. So anyway,
Awesome.
so narrative.
Yeah. Narrative
play. How just in general, like how all of the codexes, it seems like narrative play is being kind of
it's really summed up into Crusade.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So, Marines have a pretty fun narrative angle of what they do in Crusade. Basically, every time you're playing a Crusade, you'll set out and you'll choose a campaign, and campaigns play over 3 games. So it's a very specific type of campaign you're doing. One's more offensive, one's more defensive, one's more like let's get these characters are really
kind of across the board. Yeah.
Yeah. One's offense is one defense, and the third one's really characters. Like, let's make these characters shine, like the heroic legends that they are, the living legends. One thing that I absolutely love that this book brings to Crusade are the character role enhancements.
Growth. Yeah.
Yeah. Not just like the stat things, but what they do is like, if you want a chapter master, you can unlock that in Crusade. If you want a chief librarian, a chief apothecary, master of sanctity for your chaplains, like you can unlock these things in Crusade. And that's something that I really enjoyed. And I think it started in 8th edition, 8th and 9th,
it did.
Where you could add a chapter master, upgrade a captain to a chapter master, or get a chief apothecary, or
because you have like a Crusade list that you're pulling from, and then you're adding things to and growing. Yeah.
So Crusade
it makes very good for like what do they call them, like paint and grow leagues, or that's what it really helps.
Absolutely. Just some of the narrative elements that they have there in Crusade, though, I do wish they had as options. I really miss the fact that I can't say, oh, this is my chief librarian.
Right.
And he's just a little bit better doing that, because all the librarians are kind of just
the same.
Everything's a little simplified now for 10th edition, which it's fair. And that's a critique of mine specifically, not of, and that's just a critique of 10th edition, I think, of me, as I actually wish it had just a little bit.
Yeah. I think that's a fair.
And I'll talk about that in my kind of final thoughts of the book a little bit more too. But so this Crusade does some really cool things with agendas, some requisitions that are very thematic for how you're beefing up your chapter, how you're expanding units in not only gear, but get relics for characters. You can get those title upgrades, would actually have a rule that is something above and beyond what they can normally do, which are great upgrades.
Right.
Just requisitions and agendas, very thematic to how each of those different 3 types of campaigns wants to play. Like, you're scoring points based upon what you're trying to do there, and you can keep a campaign going, or So actually, I think a really good Crusade set there. For what it brings, and very thematic, very cool. Thematic. I can't say that enough. Yeah.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah. So kind of my overall thoughts for the Codex is it's a very solid update. The 2 things I am definitely missing from this Codex, and this is more of a 10th edition thing than, again, the Codex specific, but chapter tactics. There is nothing differentiating chapters from various other chapters right now, unless it's Space Wolves, Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Kill Team, something like that, Death Watch. There's no variation.
What about, like, let me throw out there, for example, Vulcan from Salamanders. Is he included in here?
He is included in this Codex. So right now, Salamanders, there's nothing special about Salamanders other than
they have a character that is specific to that chapter.
Agrax, Agatoni.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's 2 Salamanders chapters.
I forgot all about that guy.
Yeah. That's a cool model.
Yeah.
He's in the book. There are no special rules for them aside from those 2 characters, though. So it's kind of It's not even like 5th edition where you had to get that one character to unlock this for the entire army.
The problem with that in 5th edition, because the problem with that in 5th edition was
you had to see the special characters.
You had that special character. He changed everything in the army.
Yeah.
For Salamanders in particular, it was so good. Other chapters had, this isn't. I think it was
Ultra Vulcan.
It was John. This is Vulcanus.
Yeah.
But he's not Ultraman. Oh, I see.
He is today.
And
I don't miss that.
But it graded me the wrong way.
What I really missed were the Not the primary chapter tactics, but the successor chapter tactics that they had in the previous few codexes, where you pick 2 from the list and your Marines just have that little extra flavor of what makes them unique and special butterflies.
4th edition had that too, actually. There was like that little chart and you could pick from those 2 things. Yeah.
So I'd say that a lot of hits in this book. I think it's a really fun book. I think it's internally balanced pretty well. Everything seems fun and viable.
Yeah.
There are, I think, a few standout units, as we talked about in Cass's interview, and Scepters are absolutely everywhere, which is, shows, as I say in the interview, I'm not competitively focused. So I actually just sold all the ones that I had. Because like it's just not where I want to focus.
Right.
They probably would have been fun for the army, but I just really like the boots on the ground assault versus kind of those guys buzzing around. Just the feel for it personally. The only things that I kind of bemoan of the Codex are the missing chapter tactics, which I don't expect to come back for this edition unless they decide to add more layers and complexity and books and things like that, which, I won't be sad if that doesn't happen. I do miss them. And then the kind of those character upgrades of getting Chief Librarian, Chief Apothecary, Master of Sanctity, chapter masters, things like that, was always just a really nice, fun addition and a good way to spend. Oh, I got 20 points. Let's make this guy the Chief Librarian, so he gets a second psychic power. And
and so as we were talking, the book is thick. Like the Space Marine book has always been a thick one. This is a thick boy.
Yeah,
I think you could tell, as you were saying. I think you were comparing it to your Necron packs. The cards,
the data cards for
the data card pack for the Space Marines is easily twice the thickness of the Necron one.
And Necron's a pretty big offering also.
Yes.
But Space Marines definitely puts it to shame.
And you compare that to Leagues of Voton, it's not even.
You get 4 cards.
You get a pamphlet. It folds out.
Not even double sided.
Gate folded. Okay, cool. Well, Josh, I'm excited. I think the book is solid. I think it looks fun. It was fun to play against today. I didn't feel, again, we're speaking from the perspective of 2 people that are not competitively playing. So, but the interesting thing was you brought this list you've been working on for a long time. I brought a list I basically made last night, and I was like, what do I have and what can I play that I think will be fun?
Yeah.
And I broke that out and it was fun. Again, I think I was going to lose by the end of the game for sure. But boy, I was punching you in the gut the whole time and I was wrecking some stuff. And I did cause 1 wound to your Brutalis Dreadnought. Mind you, it was from
when you died.
It was from my monstrous creature deadly demise dying and causing a wound, which also caused a wound to that.
Brutalis, I really like that.
It's cool looking too.
Yeah,
that's the other thing we were talking about. Those models, the new larger Dreadnought models. I think they're really, really cool looking. I do miss the what are the Forge World Dreadnoughts? The
Contemptors.
Yeah. I love the Contemptor Dreadnought, but
I've got my relic. Contemptors are they're not based in the book, I don't think. The relic Contemptors are legends.
No, they've all been moved to legend.
I've got the Sharkadon one that I made in 5th edition.
They're just such a great model, and it's just super bummed that they didn't include those anymore. Whatever. But these are great. I think they look cooler than the old box dreads.
Yeah.
Even though they still contain some of that aesthetic.
Yeah. They're just scaled up for it, which is fitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My 1,000 Sons are using that box dread, and it's great. It's beautiful, but
they don't have Primaris technology.
So tiny.
You get the tiny guys. It's fine.
Take a bigger one. All right. Anyway. All right. So let's do this. We're going to take a break. We'll come back and we'll cover the Tyranids and where they've gone in 10th edition.
Yeah.
All right, and we're back. So we're going to move on from everybody's favorite Space Marines and talk about Tyranids for a little bit. So listen, I think first off, I think this is a solid Tyranid Codex in terms of the diversity it offers you and that kind of thing. In terms of the lore, we, as you mentioned, there's some mentions of the 4th Tyrannic War at this point with Leviathan kind of assaulting in multiple locations.
Yeah.
From underneath and above the galactic plane, which is kind of interesting.
The Z-axis.
I kind of love that. I always kind of think in 2 dimensions. When you add that 3rd dimension, it's like, oh no, they just come up wherever they want. It's
Top,
like,
bottom, left, right. They're everywhere.
Pretty brutal. There's some really cool stuff in the Leviathan book and the one that came out afterwards, the
Crusade one.
The Crusade one that has like the
It was just Tyrannic War Crusade.
yeah, it was the Norn emissary, like fighting Leontis, and Leontis about to get crushed, and then Trajan Valorous and a bunch of custodies show up and fight off this thing.
Do they come out of the webway?
No, they come from a ship. They're there, like they're come from a vehicle, and the Norn emissary like rips the arm off of one of them, and then Valorous ends up, killing it. But there's some, and it's actually pretty well written. Like I think that the stories that are in the Leviathan release are pretty well written, and a bunch of that is alluded to in the Codex.
Yeah.
So I mean, as far as moving the lore forward, it moved forward with Leviathan.
Yeah.
And kind of that's where we stand now. But boy, comparatively to the Space Marines, the Tyranids in terms of models released in support of not just Leviathan, but then this Codex.
Yeah,
I kind of lump those together because they really were.
It's a big release.
It is a huge release.
Yeah.
It is so big, like it's almost a complete rewrite of the models. I mean, there's a bunch that there are not that are also fairly newish.
It's easily half the range, I feel like, though. Yeah.
Barb Gaunts.
Yep. Those are new.
New. Lictor. New models for Lictors look great.
Update on the
Death
models.
Leaper looks sick.
That's a cool model.
That is such a sick new Termagants and Termagants. Like, honestly, I didn't see this coming. And I didn't feel like, oh yeah, if you're going to update something, update Termagants and Termagants.
I don't feel like they're wildly different, but
they're, much like the Marines and the Primaris Marines, like they're sharper detailed.
sure. Yeah.
They're a little slightly bigger, but like better detailed, better position.
It's more than just new tooling, though. Like it is actually new sculpt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Without a doubt. And better positioning on them. My Termagants and Termagants, when you bought them previously, like all their tails were perfectly straight, as I've mentioned before. When you looked at them on the table, I thought they looked kind of silly. So I took a candle and basically melted and bent all their tails in different directions. And it just made such a huge difference to the point where, like, when I saw them on the table today, I don't feel like I need to redo those.
No,
models.
yeah, they're fine. They're
great
for a chaff model, especially. Like they look good. They serve their purpose, and they're going to get pulled in handfuls.
anyway.
So yeah, it's fine.
So Gene Stealer's got new models. Again, not hugely different, just repositioned, that kind of thing. Sharper details. The Maliceptor is a new model.
Yeah.
Neurolictor, new model, new unit.
Cool models. Yeah.
Pyrovore and Byrovores. Oh my gosh.
Huge improvement.
So much better looking. So much better looking than the
They're way
previous ones.
bigger and badder looking too.
Man, they look
in a good
cool.
way. Yeah, they're cool.
They are cool. I remember the first Pyrovore that came out, people were like, this is the ugliest model GW has ever put out. It was awful looking.
We're not good.
And I believe it was fine cast when it first came out. I strongly suspect it was.
I think originally it was metal, because in 5th edition
it may have been metal and then moved to fine cast.
Begrudgingly.
The Norn Emissary or Norn Assimilator. This is
Hive Tyrant Plus.
This
they're
dude
big.
is awesome.
Yeah.
And I love the
Great
model.
models.
I think that model looks fantastic.
Either build. Yeah.
Von Ryan's Leapers. So these are new models and sort of new units. I mean, they're
smaller lictors.
They're smaller lictors.
Kind of a unit of lictors instead of more lone ops. Yeah.
The Winged Tyranid Prime, which had been out. Oh no, that's new. That's new.
That's new of Leviathan.
Yep. Yep.
Not my favorite model, actually.
No, I actually don't like the positioning of the wings.
I think it's the posing of the wings for me.
Not a huge fan of that one. The Neuro Tyrant, which is a new model and new unit.
Yeah, that's cool.
Screamer Killer, which boy did some work today.
Yeah.
That is a great unit.
It turns out it's really good at killing scouts.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm missing one on here. We were talking about the Winged High Tyrant, and I feel like I'm missing something on here. But anyway, my point being, even there, that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 14 new.
A handful of those are double kits, but
Yeah.
still, that's a lot of new units.
Yeah, I mean, that's
new models.
I call it out where it's a double kit. Pyrovore, Biovore, that's a new kit. You know, I'm 14 new kits.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
that's a line.
That's a huge release.
Yeah.
Like, I would be shocked if anybody else gets a release this big.
Yeah. I don't think anybody will.
Oh my God. Like, where are the Eldar,
Striking Scorpions
Striking
coming
Scorpions.
out this month.
They look great.
They're coming.
They look great. Where's the Warp Spiders?
I think I'm absolutely fingers crossed hoping here that they are going to come with the new Codex.
Yeah.
I think
so.
I think we're going to finally get those last.
I'd be so excited.
In plastic.
The aspect stuff would be so good.
Yeah.
Okay. So primary rules of the unit. Now, this has been something that has always kind of shifted and people have liked or hated or whatever. Back in the day, 4th edition, I remember Shadow of the Warp or Synapse. If you were in Synapse, you were fearless. Fearless was a rule that
was a big deal.
Heck yeah. Fearless was you did not break. And you took additional
You took the overkill wounds, though, which
but arguably
pros and cons.
Fearless was way to
on
go.
units, way better. Monsters, less good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now what they've done with Synapse is it's still, you have Synapse creatures and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of Synapse creatures. So like, I didn't have like a problem where I felt like, I need to make sure. There was one case where I was like, I need to make sure these guys stay about 6 inches away from this guy. But other than that, it was like not an issue.
Yeah. You got a lot of bubbles.
A lot of bubbles. It might have been also the formation I was running.
Yeah.
So Synapse is you're rolling 3d6 for your leadership tests instead of 2d6.
And there's no
For
more
battle
like
shock test.
feeding instinct or hunting or like
Nope, that's all gone.
So it's just a battle shock bonus if
That's
you're
it.
in range. Okay.
That's
so
it.
It's no longer a con potential. It's just
it's just a good.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, 3d6 is almost as good as Fearless.
Yeah.
Like, because it's not 3d6.
Although some of your commands are going up to like an 8+. So
Yeah.
on 2d6,
I think that's taken into account.
Yes.
But my point being,
Still likely to get it.
yeah, 7 is the most average roll you're going to do on 2 dice.
Right.
This is 3d6, not take the highest 2. This is 3d6, add them all together.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
Like, so you don't break. You don't break from stuff. I didn't have 1 unit break.
Hive mind doesn't care.
And then Shadow of the Warp, which we discussed earlier. Now you have Hive Tyrants, possibly the Norn. I'd have to go look. There's very few creatures that have actual Shadow of the Warp, but once you do it, all enemy units on the entire board, once per game, can be forced to take a battle shock test. And it came in clutch today. So,
which when you like battle shock isn't, I don't think battle shock as a whole is making as big of a splash in 10th edition as people hoped leadership would.
Interesting.
But when it does, it does.
And what's interesting, and you'll hear in my my discussion in the competitive scene with Matt, is if you take that into account, the Tyranids have a lot of units that cause battle shock and cause you to make battle shocks at minuses.
Oh yeah.
And so leaning into that, you can actually really be effective with this army. So know that that's one of the levers that they're having you pull in the Tyranid Codex is battle shock manipulation and that kind of thing. All right. So ton of models. Of those models, Josh, that have come out in the refresh of Tyranids, what would you say is your favorite?
Oh man. I really like all, I have a hard time doing favorites. I'm going to have 2 answers.
Okay. You can give me 2.
One is broad because it's all the new flavors of lictors. I really like all those. The Vine
They look
Ryans,
great.
the Death Leaper, and just lictors. Like I think they all look good. Lictors I've always loved the idea of, but haven't always loved the model. And this again been playing all the way back since second edition.
And I would say previously lictors were all metal.
Yes.
Before they went to Finecast, which I wasn't going to do.
And those long spindly tails
were impossible to get on. I literally didn't do lictors because I didn't want to assemble that model.
Yep. Now you got them in plastic and they look amazing. And I think the rules are pretty solid for them too.
Yes.
The Neurotyrant I actually really like. It's kind of like the super zoanthrope. And I've always loved that just aesthetic of just kind of the floating brain.
I always picture like
Yeah.
It's like electricity playing around
the
their head.
pulsating
and,
and the colors shifting. It's more of a true like bioluminescence of what we actually see in like sea creatures of the deep. Kind of really brought to life in a very alien way. So yeah, fantastic.
This is hard for me to choose too, to be honest with you. And like, first off, Death Leaper is so good.
Yeah.
Like that skin cloak thing is so cool looking on it. But I do have to say, I'm going to do two. So it's Death Leaper is my favorite. I agree with you on your Lictor choice. Like I think that's an excellent choice. And then my second has to be most improved. And it's the Pyrovore Biovore. Like, so good.
Yeah.
So good. I think, you know what one I was missing is what's the one with they're carrying the gun now?
Barbagons?
Barbagons.
Yeah.
Oh, I did say Barbagons.
You did, yeah.
That was the first one I said. That's actually, that's the one thing I think is a miss.
A little bit of a miss.
Like it's not, I've seen worse.
Yeah.
But it's not by a long shot my favorite. So I didn't look at that model and go, I need to put those in my army. I saw Death Leaper. I was like, how do I put Death Leaper in my army?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. And then the Norn emissaries are cool, but I think I picked my two. Okay. So we talked Shadow of the Warp. We talked Synapse. I want to talk Force Org.
Yep.
Because much like the Space Marine, there's 6 new Tyranid detachments here. You have the invasion fleet, which is really designed around how do you start an invasion. This is where you're going to have like your lictors and that kind of stuff all kind of sneaking around.
No Gene Stealer Cult though.
No.
Would be interesting if they actually had done a detachment that mixed the two.
That's true.
But
you have the Crusher Stampede, which is what I rolled with today. And this is when the Tyranids are like
the big bugs.
We got to smash down these walls. We got to destroy these tanks. And the Hive Mind sends out the huge bugs along with supporting units to deal with.
Historically known as Nidzilla.
Now, what's interesting, before I go any further into these, I'll get through the Force Orgs and then I'll talk about what's interesting here. You have the Unending Swarm, which is, again, super thematic.
Lots of bodies.
You can bring some stuff back.
Yep.
You have the Assimilation Swarm, which is where, you're now just assimilating and devouring the planet. You have the Vanguard Onslaught. You have the Synaptic Nexus, which is kind of the one I think you would dig because it's got
all the zone thropes.
All the zone thropes and all that stuff get all these benefits. Okay. So here's the other thing that when we played today, I did not take advantage of. One, each one of these gets certain advantages. Yeah. So the one I played, for example, the Crusher Stampede, has your monstrous creatures, if they've taken a wound, they get to reroll ones on the attack. If they're less than half wound, they're also rerolling damage.
Yeah.
So like the more you damage them, especially when you pair that with the Carnifexes who are running towards you.
They're running at you and getting better as they
super
do.
Fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
And super thematic, right? And they're more dangerous the more, the more damage you're doing. But what I didn't take advantage of was each of these also has their own set of what am I trying to say? Stratagems
and enhancements.
Yeah, that you can use for each one of them. Yeah. So there are stratagems that are specific to each of these formations,
right?
As well as additional add-ons that you can do specific to.
That's true of the Marines too. If I didn't make that clear, each set of stratagems is specific to those detachments, and the 3 enhancements that are available are specific to those detachments.
Incredibly flavorful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like incredibly flavorful. And this really, as I looked through these. And I looked at what I had as a collection of Tyranids, along with what I had out in the garage, which I mentioned to you. I had to go out to my garage because I had like all these gaunts out in the garage and the Turvagon. I had a couple Turvagons out in the garage too. And I go out there and I bring in this thing and I'm sitting there typing my list. Next thing I know, I see a spider crawling across my chest. And for those who don't know, I am extremely arachnophobic. Like, the fastest way to get kicked from our Facebook group is to post a picture of a spider, say, "Hey, Carl."
Don't even be fun about it.
I'm not even joking.
You're gone.
Yeah. I screamed and freaked out in the house. And I've been, pardon my language, the guy's around here somewhere. And I'm looking to crush him. But the thing that I felt like it just made it so thematic. And as I looked at my collection of models, I thought, okay, which one of these can I do kind of best right now? And I really dug like the Synaptic Nexus. I'm into big psyker stuff. Yeah. So I was like, I don't really have a lot of the models that would pair well with that. But boy, that would be fun to do.
Yep.
And of course, my thing is, well, what would I need to buy? Nothing, Carl. You don't need to buy anything right now.
You got the future.
At some point in the future,
Finish your Black Legion.
I guess my thing
Yeah.
with that is it's just super inspiring.
Yeah.
Like it's super inspiring and fun.
They all look like fun ways to play. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
And very thematic.
Couldn't agree.
Be a
agree more.
fun, and this probably doesn't fit a detachment, but something that's very psychic. And so you have lots of zone thropes and neurolictors, and then a bunch of the lictors as well.
Yeah.
Would be a really fun list, but you just got these kind of ambush dudes and then all the psychic guys back.
So cool.
Would be a lot of fun.
These things are so cool. Yeah. I really like the way they have gone. I really like the direction they've taken with the force organization.
So thematic on how each detachment is playing.
Yeah. And they walk you through kind of each step of like the Tyranid invasion, right? The high fleets show up and then this, and then they get biomass and they send out more things and blah, blah, blah. And so they walk you through how a planet is stripped. And all of these things kind of support that.
If you had a huge collection and were playing a campaign with just like a one-on-one campaign, you're like, okay, I'm going to start with this detachment and then go to this one, then this one. And that just, represents the evolving warfare.
We'll talk about that when we come back, because we're going to go talk to Matt right now, Matt Evans, about how these things play in competition. But when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about narratively what the Crusade tools kind of look like, and how it feeds exactly into what you just said.
Awesome.
Exactly into what you just said. Because I have a feeling, because I haven't looked at the Space Marine Crusade rules, I have a feeling it's just like they're all going to be somewhat kind of similar, just kind of reskinned. But we'll talk about that when we get right back. So let's talk to Matt right now about what these things look like competitively. All right, so I'm here with Matt Evans. Matt, you're a serial Tyranid tournament player in your area. First off, thanks for joining. Appreciate it.
Of course. Happy to be here.
So Matt has played at the Las Vegas Open for 10 years or so. I think 8 of those 10 years you've played Tyranids. I'm very sorry you went through 7th edition with Tyranids. You've won the Storm of Silence in Spokane, Washington a couple times. You've played the Salt Lake City Open. You play a lot of local tournaments in your Denver area where at least 2 of your competitors / teammates are on Team America. So it's like you're playing in a tough circle of players. The California Cup, you won Best Tyranids, but lost to Nick Nanavati. And as we said when we were prepping, if you're going to lose to anybody, Nick might be the guy that you're going to lose to. So there's no shame in that. There's no shame in that.
Not at all.
So let's talk briefly about the Tyranids have a new codex out. And I was kind of curious what your initial impressions are. This is one of the first codexes to come out in 10th edition, paired with the Space Marines. So pretty iconic matchup. When you got your hands on the codex and started looking at it in comparison to the data cards, what were your initial thoughts?
Initial thoughts were I was over the moon about the Norns.
Okay.
Purely because, not necessarily because they're like this incredible data sheet. They are good. They're very solid. Their points value makes them difficult to, people aren't just going to spam 5 Norns and win in a game.
Right.
But,
just wait.
Specifically, their OC-15 ability is exactly what Tyranids had been struggling with the index. Basically, the problem, Tyranids were really great at secondary game because obviously you have the Biobores with the Spore Mines. You have lots of little chaff that can go around everywhere. Tyranids had no problem getting 40 points in the secondary game. Their issue was always surviving to win the primary.
Right.
And so when the Codex first dropped and I saw the Norns as this durable monster that's OC-15 that can just sit on an objective and score you primary all game, that was immediately...
That's a huge objective control point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's massive.
So I ended up bringing triple Norn to the Charity Hammer. Which
so you're not going to spam 5, but you're going to spam 3.
Yeah, I will spam 3, 100%.
It's the Justin Kiefer approach. Take 3 of it.
Yes. I I mean, Tyranids have always kind of been that where
Yeah.
you kind of want to run doubles of everything,
Uh-huh.
and then if it's really broken, then you probably want 3. But yeah, so that was immediately the first thing I noticed, which was the Norns. Since then, I've actually kind of gotten off of the Norns. The meta recently has shifted a lot more towards, the Marine Ironstorm, so people are preparing to kill big, tanky Redemptor Dreads and the like.
Right.
And the Norn is unfortunately kind of the same profile, so he just gets shot in that crossfire.
Right. He becomes an immediate target for
that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
People are starting to bring lots and lots of anti-tank, so I've kind of shifted away from the Norns, just because they're also 3 of them is 900 points. But the other new data sheet, the Neurolictors, are absolutely incredible. They are probably the best unit in the book. Wow.
What makes them so appealing?
So Neurolictors are 65 points, and they are a lone op with scout, with infiltrate, and they have a 4+ invulnerable save and 7 wounds and stealth. So they're just ridiculously hard to kill for their 65 points.
God, 4+ invuln and stealth is a nice combination.
And so basically what you tend to do with them is you just put 3 of them across the center board, just off of the objectives, because you don't want to start on the objectives in case your opponent pulls a secondary to kill you. But start just off of that objective, and then your opponent can't scout or infiltrate on you, so they work as that little screen. And then their secondary ability is in your command phase, pick an enemy unit within 12 of that Neurolictor. They take a battle shock check, and if they fail, they are -1 to hit, and your entire army is +1 to wound against you.
Wow.
Against them.
Are they synapse? They're synapse, right?
They are not synapse.
Okay.
They should be, because they have brains and everything.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
But no, they're just an absolutely incredible unit, and the whole +1 to wound thing is exactly what Tyranids need, because the biggest issue with Tyranids is they have a strength cap at 9.
Yeah.
And so any T10 plus thing Tyranids really, really, really struggle with.
Yeah.
And so an ability to get that +1 to wound is so important. So just basically having 3 Neurolictors. And the nice thing is you can even triple up on that. If, say, you're playing a hold 1, hold 2 mission, you just hold your home field and you pick one of the center objectives.
Yeah.
Put all 3 Neurolictors there, and they just continually will battle shock on that objective until the unit fails.
Right.
And then you get +1 to wound against it.
That's pretty sweet. You're making me want to play Tyranids.
Yeah. If you can't tell, I'm a bit of a fan.
So as you're looking at the various detachments they released, I mean, does one particular detachment appeal to you, or do you just appreciate that there's flexibility amongst the 6 or so detachments they've released?
Yeah. So when the book came out, the detachments are really cool. Immediately the Vanguard, I mean, it's the same Vanguard as what has come out in now,
right.
Necrons and Space Marines. It's the same kind of thing of just be everywhere all the time. That is certainly my play style. I love to try that. Unfortunately for LVO, they have FAQ'd to where basically the detachment doesn't work the way I need it to. Because they FAQ'd that if you can't use a free strat if it also targets an enemy unit.
Okay.
Because you're not allowed to target multiple units with a free strat. And so they ruled that because it targets an enemy unit, that is, as well as your unit, that is multiple units. And the Vanguard strat that is a battle tactic is you pick a friendly unit and you pick an enemy unit, and your friendly unit gets +1 to hit against them. And then they take a battle shock check. And again, because of the Neurolictors, basically you would have a Hive Tyrant and you would just spam battle shock checks on your opponent until you get that +1 to wound.
Yeah, it's such an interesting that the whole battle shock test or the whole morale test type of approach to the army is interesting. It's something I never really exploited in previous editions. And I know that there were a few units that did cause those kinds of things, but I think it's kind of, they've leaned into it a little bit in this edition.
Yeah, it's never really been impactful before. I mean, not since 5th edition.
Yeah.
And now it is impactful and it isn't at the same time. The only reason it's impactful for Tyranids is because of the Neurolictors turning it into a +1 to wound.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, other armies that have battle shock stuff that they can do during their turn outside of the normal time, it doesn't benefit them at all because the unit rallies at the beginning of your opponent's turn, so it doesn't actually stop anything.
Gotcha.
The Tyranids, because their Shadow in the Warp happens in their opponent's command phase, that can knock them out for an entire turn, and it is a really good ability. Unfortunately, it only works 1 out of every 4 games.
Sure.
But when it works, it is literally game winning.
Wow.
But
okay.
The Neurolictors are just that +1 to wound bonus. Tyranids need it so desperately. It's one of those where I'm afraid in the next balance slate that they're going to hit Neurolictors because Tyranid players have to run.
Are relying on it. Okay. So you would say that's a unit that right now for you is a must take.
Yeah. At least 2. I take 3 in every single list.
Okay. That's really interesting. What are your thoughts? I mean, before I move away from the Codex and its actual performance, I mean, it's really there's only, I think 4 Codexes out at this moment that we're talking, right? Yeah. There's Necrons, AdMech, Space Marine, and Tyranids. How are you feeling the Tyranids are standing up against those other 3 at the moment?
I have not played against the new Necrons. The new Necrons are probably the biggest competitor, like the ones that the Tyranids might struggle with the most. The new AdMech book, I have not heard anyone say anything good about it.
Oh, that's a real shame.
So
that's a real shame.
I don't know. It's still new, so people are probably still figuring it out.
Yeah.
But I have not fought against the new AdMech book at all, and I've been told not to worry about it.
Oh, interesting.
I also have not fought against the new Necrons, but I have been told to worry about them. So.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, as a non-tournament player, right, I think the most important thing for me is the army fun to play against. There has been in the past, I think Josh, one of his concerns was that playing Necrons is not fun for the players because you're beating the heck out of them. They just keep coming back and you feel like you're not making any progress. I think he said after his look at it, he feels like, this will probably be a little more fun to play against in that regard. But I don't know what that translates to tournament wise.
The new Necron book, what it looks like is the beating your head against a wall aspect has kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
But they've got a lot more tricks now. They've got the Vanguard-like detachment as well as the Canoptic detachment, which the Canoptic detachment sounds fun because it's just using units that haven't seen play in a while.
Yeah.
And it makes them really good. And then the Vanguard detachment is, it just makes the Necrons have play that they haven't had before.
Yeah.
But it does sound like the continual revival of Warriors beating your head against that unit is gone. But
one of the interesting things to me about the new Tyranid Codex and new Tyranid, and I think you can't just call it Tyranid Codex. I think it's a new Tyranid release because
it is.
This is a major overhaul of a lot of models, plus an addition of 4 to 5 new model units. I mean, it's a pretty impressive release that had to, as a Tyranid fanboy, which I can tell looking behind you. I mean, that had to be something that you were like excited about immediately. Other than the Neurolictors, is there something else that appealed to you, or the Screamer Killer, any of that?
I love to play the Screamer Killers. They seem super cool. They're a little 2 points heavy. As a tournament player, they're a little 2 points heavy, unfortunately. Okay. I do expect them to drop in the next data slate, and I will be putting them everywhere.
Yeah, their ranged attack is actually really good.
And it causes battle shock.
Yeah. Again, my point on the battle shock piece, like it's interesting that and you know what? It's, as I think about it a little bit more as you're talking about it, it's pretty thematic. I mean,
it is.
It would be horrifying. Like you look at movies like Starship Troopers and you see this just horde of things coming. I mean, let me just.
Yeah,
I'll just end myself before they get to me. I would be the worst Imperial Guardsman ever.
I mean, fair.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool.
I agree. So Tyranids, they lost the anti-psyker aspect because the psychic phase has disappeared from the game.
Yeah.
And so they shifted that into a battle shock thing, which I'm totally fine with. I do wish we had some kind of psychic defense against psychic weapons.
Yeah.
Which we don't. But I'm totally fine with the battle shock is a theme.
Right.
And with that, so other units that are jumping out actually that I've been implementing in a lot of my lists recently are melee Tyranid warriors are back again.
Okay. As opposed to shooty Tyranid war.
Yeah. So, I mean, they were great in 9th because they shot and they punched and they just did everything at hyper points efficiency. Now they're definitely not points efficient. They're kind of a glass cannon. And the melee version, in the Vanguard, they can assault or they can advance and charge, and that makes them really good for teleporting around. And that's what I was playing in local events until I found out that basically, again, the list doesn't work as I was hoping because of the FAQ.
Right.
So because of that, I've swapped from the Vanguard and I've actually gone back to the index detachment purely for the lethal hits against monsters and vehicles. Because again, Tyranids cap at strength 9. So,
but this has always been something that Tyranids have struggled with, is to rip open. Well, ever since
struggled against tanks.
I mean, yeah, I think 5th edition was the last time they got like monstrous creature strength, and they'd roll an extra die for pin.
Because back then, when you could do like smash attacks, that was how you killed tanks.
Right, but that's gone. And in fact, that's where I super struggled in 7th edition. I mean, I ran a campaign involving Tyranids, and it. And I first off, it was hard to get people to play Tyranids. And then second off, once they played them, like it was an uphill battle to the point where I was like, maybe Tyranid players should get extra 25% points or something, because
people were talking about that. The way that I was doing well in 7th edition was Genestealer Cult had just come out.
Yeah.
And basically I was Tyranids, which was 3 flying hive tyrants with Genestealer Cult on the ground.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Okay.
And unfortunately, that's kind of the way you had to play.
Yeah. I mean,
competitively back in 7th.
And I mean, I'm not the kind of person that I'm usually like, let me find the silver lining, and okay, yeah, it's tough, but it was dishearteningly hard. Like I felt like, oh, this is just, it's not even a viable army to play. And that's when it got shelved. And now that this new stuff has come out, and especially the new models have just blown my mind.
They're so cool.
I'm having a hard time not getting focused on,
I mean, look at this.
Yeah, that's such a great model.
Such a gorgeous model.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and the new lictors and the new what's the one with the cape?
Death Leaper.
The Death Leaper, so cool. He's so cool looking.
Yeah. So I love the range, obviously.
Yeah.
It's what keeps me going when the nids are bad. And right now, I would put them as a solid B ranked army.
Okay, that was actually going to be my next question. Hypothetically, where do you see them standing? I mean, they're always trying to balance everything, but the reality is somebody's at the bottom and somebody's at the top. I mean, where do you see them standing? What's your guess a year from now? If I come back to Matt a year from now and I go, okay, how do you think they're
a year from now? I expect them to unfortunately be pretty close to the bottom. It's that
I don't want to hear that.
It's that power creep.
Yeah.
We're the first codex in the cycle.
Yeah.
So I do hope that the balanced data slates will keep us in the game. But unfortunately, that's just the nature of being the first codex to come out. You get all the cool toys first, but then you
watch it slowly decline.
But currently, I would put us solidly in the middle of the pack, maybe a touch above the halfway mark.
Okay.
We do have glaring weaknesses with, again, unable to deal with T10 and above.
Yeah.
So if we go up against Imperial or Chaos Knights,
that's got to be rough.
And unfortunately, the new Iron Storm detachment from Space Marines, we're really good at killing every other Space Marine detachment. The Iron Storm
that one
is not, because it's all toughness 10 vehicles.
Jeez. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, the Vanguard and everything, we have Exocrines and Maleceptors that all are flat 3 damage guns. So Inceptors, Eradicators, everything like that, all these Terminators, flat 3 damage just blows right through them.
Yeah.
And we're really good at killing that.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, low AP, low strength, and also kind of low durability as well.
Yeah.
In the index detachment, we have a 5-up feel no pain strat, which we'll just spam.
Yeah.
And that keeps us a little bit durable. Or you can play the Synaptic detachment, which gives you Armor of Contempt on Synapse monsters. So that's where I was playing the triple Norn.
Got it.
You can also give the Norn Armor of Contempt, and it gets gross. But aside from that, everything dies super easily. Only Hive Tyrants and Maleceptors have invulns.
Yeah.
Everything else is just T10 with a 3-up save. So
this is also one of the things that, like, thematically I love the Tyranids, but it's one of the things that keeps me from being attached to the Tyranids. And I think like orcs have more personality than Tyranids by design.
I mean, as a nature, we are one face.
Yes.
One hive mind. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Well, listen, Matt, thank you so much for your time. I super appreciate you taking us off, especially right after Christmas. So thank you so much. And you know what? I'll check in with you in a year and we'll see where the Tyranids sit at that point.
That sounds great. I'd love to give you happy news.
Okay. All right. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you later, Carl. Thanks.
Okay. Look, I want to thank Matt and Cass for stepping in. We asked for volunteers of people who were playing these things competitively, who could help us understand kind of what the mindset there is.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you guys for your time. I do appreciate you scheduling the time with us, and it was incredibly enlightening and
great insights, and just a different way that how to play the game than how we play in general. So it's very interesting to see how you're playing with the same rules, the same models, but in a very different way.
Yes, it was. Yeah. And let's talk about that in the wrap up.
Sure.
Because there's a couple things there, but it was also great to meet Matt in person, virtually in person and just chat with him. Cause after the interview, obviously we chatted for just a little bit about family stuff and what he likes collecting and stuff. And
nice.
Great guy. Okay. So, let's talk about the narrative stuff and in particular the Crusade function.
Yeah.
So the very cool, piece of this in, Crusade is much like probably the Marines, you have the ability to add battle traits, and you take battle scars, and there's Crusade relics you can get to, and Crusade badges you can take. Now, again, in Crusade, you are building your, I'm trying to remember what it's called, like battle list or
order of battle,
or whatever it's called. And then that's kind of what you're pulling from. And then to go on to bigger games, you are basically adding to that battle list. In this, what you're doing is you are devouring worlds.
Oh, cool.
It's literally, the section's literally called Devouring Worlds. You're going through and you're fighting over world types.
Yep.
So industrial, rural, hive worlds, etc. And then when you win games, you earn biomass.
Oh, awesome.
And when you lose games, you lose biomass.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then as you gain biomass, you can buy additional units. You can now open up your battle list to bring in additional units based on through biogenesis, where you're spending biomass points.
So one thing I didn't say on the Marines is they're all about honor. So you win games, you gain honor points. You lose games, something happens. You achieve certain agendas, you gain honor points. And then you spend honor points to get those things. So it's just a neat conception that, and again, very thematic, that Marines are going for their honor stuff and Tyranids are all about biomass. Surprise. So that's a really cool.
It's just super thematic.
Even if it's just a name on how you track that mechanic, that's awesome.
And it's probably slightly different.
Yeah.
Right. It's probably slightly different, but as you gain biomass, for example, for 2 biomass, you can increase your Crusade's force supply limit by 100. Right. For 4 biomass, you get rare biomorphs. You can select Tyranid character from your order of battle. That's what it's called. You can reduce the cost of the renowned hero's requisition by 1 requisition point to a minimum of 0, and use it immediately and give that model in that unit the enhancement as if it had gained a rank. So you're just there's just several different things between 2, 4, 5, 6 biomass, right? You're gaining requisition points. You're increasing the size of the
adding stuff, getting bigger things, getting upgrades.
And I just thought thematically that is super cool.
That's amazing. I love that they did that.
Yeah. And then, again, you have kind of 3 options of what kind of games you're playing and that kind of stuff. But
so you have agendas, requisitions.
So, very cool. I again, in the longest time, I have not been inspired by a codex. You've just been okay, here's my rules.
Here's the new rules.
Yeah. Okay, great. Looking through this codex and not having played my Tyranids in a long time, this had me going, oh yeah, that's why I played Tyranids.
There is a lot of fun to them.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that still for me is a drawback about Tyranids is the lack of character.
Yeah.
You are just playing.
They're not the personal
a swarm, right? As far as horde armies go, it's a great one.
Yep.
But when you look at the orcs have they're a horde army, but they have like character in them that is interesting.
Yes.
Even going to like Age of Sigmar, a horde army like the Skaven, like you have interesting characters within the Skaven.
There's a lot of personality and characters, and
for this, you don't really have a lot. I mean, you have some names like Old One Eye and that kind of stuff, and he's still in there, but it's not really a character.
Yeah, which thematically also makes sense because it's the hive mind driving this one fleet, right?
That all tracks.
Yeah.
So, but it does make it hard for me to like
there's
care
less personal investment on the tabletop, even though they're always fun games. So yeah.
I will say the games I play with you, I have had more fun playing Tyranids than any other games I've played playing Tyranids. And I don't know why that is. I think it's just because
I play Marines wrong on Assault. No, but they have been a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got to tell you, I think the Codex is solid. Matt, as you just heard, thinks it's kind of upper middle tier.
Yeah.
You know, he's running, you know, the competitive list with 3 of the greatest things, and you know, and that's what you do. He also recognizes some of the weaknesses of it, things he'd like to do, but they don't really hold up in these roundabout things. The interesting discussion we had was really around manipulation of battle shock tests and that kind of stuff, which is really fascinating. So, anyway, I you know, doing show of force are always scary because it's like, oh, you know, I could just,
boy.
And when you pair that with the game that we just came off of that was super fun to play, it makes me go, oh man, maybe I should do Tyranids. I am not. Like
you already have the Tyranids.
I already have them.
You can definitely update them with some new models.
If we want to play, we can play. Cool. I don't need to add anything to them right now. Like I have enough to do with that in the Leviathan box. I have enough to do. I don't need to do it anymore. Someday I may come back and add.
Yeah, give it time.
And now that I know, like Von Ryan's Leapers are there, and the Lictors and the
and they came in Leviathan, right? So you have some Von.
Oh, that's right. They did come in Leviathan. I think you come with 3.
3. Yeah.
So I forgot I had those. I could have used those. Anyway, my point being, it seems like a super fun codex to play right now. If I ran a campaign where it was Tyranids versus Imperium a while back, and the Tyranids were just so on the back foot. It was just
right. Yeah.
We just got rolled over.
Yeah,
and
I remember those games.
And like now would be a great time to run that kind of thing.
I played Tyranids in 2nd edition. I also played Tyranids in 5th edition, and have played against you in various editions since 5th, 5th and 7th. 5th, 6th, and 7th, I should say. But haven't played a lot of them since.
We didn't play a lot of 6. Like 6 kind of came and went super fast.
But they've always been a really fun army to play with and play against. So yeah, at some point, maybe I'm not going to say no, but
this is an interesting thing. I mean, you know, I also felt like both the forces we played today were fun to play against.
Yeah.
And that's so important because one of your concerns with Necrons was, oh, they're not going to be fun to play against. And the old days, birthing all the, you know, gaunts, like you were rolling 3d6, you were flooding the table with gaunts. And listen, I mean, for me, I thought it was fun. I thought it was fun to play. And the first time I saw that, I played against a guy doing that. And I was playing,
like, oh, that was cool.
I was playing Berserkers.
Yeah.
I lost that game big time. But man, I slaughtered so many before he gummed up.
I think the first time I played against you was 5th edition with my Salamanders at the time.
Yeah, that was
so I
when
had
we
a
ran.
ton of Flamers and you had a ton of Gaunts, and it was a
super
really
awesome.
fun game. Yeah.
Yep. So I anticipate more games like that.
Yeah.
Too. So I will pick this codex up.
Nice. Yeah. I would love to
I used to
run this
buy all the
back
codexes, and they would send us the codexes, and we're not being sent stuff any longer because we dropped out of that a while back. But and I wound up like at the end of last edition with codexes still in shrink wrap because I was like,
Yeah.
I don't play this army. And none of the group does. So you know, that being said, I will definitely pick this codex up.
Yeah.
Not only because I'll probably play some more of this, especially with you, but also because I want the code so I can build the list and
code for the app. Yeah.
So, yeah, great stuff. I really like where they're headed so far, and we'll see as that continues into hit Necrons and Admech
Mechanicus, yep.
coming up. And then, I think next episode we'll talk Legions Imperialis because we'll have some games under our belt.
Yeah.
And okay. So with that, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll close out the show.
Sounds great.
All right, we're back to close out the show, and I really should have kept a notepad. Well, there was a point I really wanted to bring up here at the end of the show, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was, but c'est la vie. C'est la vie.
Yeah.
Listen, I think we're off to a great start with these codexes. I'm curious to see where the rest of it goes. I'm anxious to see what Thousand Suns and Chaos Codex looks like.
The two that I own so far being Marines and Necrons, I'm very happy with how they look and play.
Chaos has always been one that I felt like kind of ever since 4th edition after that has kind of gotten the short end of the stick. Although I actually liked a lot of the 5th edition codex, but I mean, hopefully, if we see stuff like this where you have like these different formation stuff, I might be I'm excited.
And Thousand Suns are going to get their own supplemental detachments, and World Leaders will, and Death Guard will, which I'm assuming the same Firstborn chapters.
I think they will.
Will as well.
I think they will.
Founding chapters, yeah.
I'm super stoked about it. Playing again today, I think, reignited a fire under my butt, and especially about stupid Tyranids. Damn it.
Show Force gotcha.
I've been kind of looking at my armies and going, I'm only really playing these 2. All right, now I'm maybe playing 3. I also have Sisters of Battle, which I really dig, so I'm not getting rid of those. I am trying to sell off my Horus Heresy army, my Word Bearers, but no luck so far. Just one bite, but it was a scammer trying to get me to.
I can put you in touch. There's a pretty big group in the like Santa Clara area that plays, and I'm sure somebody would know somebody if not immediately.
Yeah, I think I'm asking a reasonable cost for fully painted resin Horus Heresy army, but maybe not. Maybe it's too much. I don't know. But I'm just not playing on. They're just collecting dust. I took them out to take photos and stuff, and I was like, hang on, I got to brush all this off. So I brushed them all off and cleaned
canned
them
air
up.
out.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it comes in waves. Like Jeff was saying, didn't you say never sell fully painted armor? I've sold multiple fully painted armies.
I've sold many over the years.
Sold my Ultramarines. I sold my Word Bearers. I found pictures of those when I was redoing the website.
Oh yeah.
Found I'm selling this army. It happens.
I've probably sold 8 armies at this point.
Good God,
but I've been playing for 30 plus
I've got
years.
those Minotaurs, and it's like I'm never gonna play them. But those are like, for me, those are that's fine that they sit there not played.
Okay.
Like they were. First off, I didn't paint them. I got them from Ed Brown from Forge World.
Yeah,
and they were in a Forge World book.
Yep.
And so for me, that's the history along with them is all I need.
They're an artifact, not an army. They're an artifact.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
They belong in a museum.
That's right. All right. Well, I think, next episode we'll talk Legions Imperialis and actual play and what it's like and what our attraction there is. And then I think
your wallets are warned.
We'll start coming back to direct 40K content, potentially looking at Admech and Necron stuff. So I don't know. We'll take a look at the list of things we're going to be doing, and we'll see what the timing is right. But we will have a guest for Legions Imperialis.
Absolutely.
Somebody will join us. I'm not going to say who, because we'll see. But we're going to get a third person. We'll get somebody in here who will argue with us. He probably won't argue with us. Huh? Somebody who hates. When we do a Necromunda episode, we'll have a Don.
Yes.
Oh wait, we can't. All right. True. Listen. All right. Well, anyway, you got any final thoughts on this stuff, or did I cover it?
I'm just actually pretty pumped. Obviously, I'm loving all the games I'm playing right now with Titanicus and
you're all over the place,
and Necromunda is taking a little bit of a back burner right now, but that's I think going to swing up in the next couple months. Also, just as we get ready for a potential summer campaign.
Just too much to do. There's too much good stuff.
There is too much good stuff.
And that has forced me to kind of narrow what I'm doing.
I've definitely
hence selling the Horse Heresy army.
I've definitely consolidated and focused more on the things that I'm playing and these kind of 4 main game systems that I'm very much loving and enjoying. And you know, it's just it's a great place to be and happy for more of all of it.
That's the other thing. I have the Chaos Age of Sigmar army. I'm like, I'm not playing Age of Sigmar. Am I gonna play Age of Sigmar? I could play Demons in Age of Sigmar if I really wanted to.
There you go.
Yeah, I should sell that. Colin painted it. Looks great.
Maybe hold off to see what happens with the old world if you.
That's true.
A lot of people are going to be very excited.
I
loved fantasy. I would happily jump back into it, but I have too many games right now. So
this is my point. This is what I'm saying.
As excited as I am for old world to come back, I am not jumping into it.
All right. Give me an idea for an episode. All right. Well, anyway, as you know, we have this all on YouTube. If you're watching it on YouTube right now, we love you.
Yeah.
You're awesome. If you're not,
thanks.
We love you too.
Yeah.
But you should check out our YouTube.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. We show Josh spends a lot of time editing this to get it up and ready.
A lot of good visuals. Anything we talk about, like this episode with new models dropping, things like that, you get the visual reference just right there on the
Josh
spot.
gets so frustrated. He starts his drive home. By the time he's home, I'm like, I'm done editing the audio. He's like, I haven't even got home.
Cool. I'll be done in a day or two.
Yeah, the video editing takes quite a bit longer. So we have a YouTube channel. You can leave us reviews on iTunes or whatever your podcast aggregator of choice is. Please do.
Yeah.
We do go out and look at those. It does help the show get noticed more. We would greatly appreciate if you'd leave us reviews. And wherever you're listening to us, we appreciate it.
Yeah, if you have any feedback for the show too, format-wise, topic-wise, whatever, we're always open to any kind of suggestions, critical feedback, anything like that. Yeah,
we beg for it.
Yeah,
I mean, I actually got somebody. The joke about finding somebody to argue with us is a legitimate point. Like,
we agree on a lot.
You and I agree on a lot. That's why we get along so well. That's why Jeff and I would always fight. We did not.
Yeah.
Jeff and I get along great, but Jeff had a very different viewpoint and was much more critical about stuff than I was. And I appreciated that he had a different viewpoint. But a lot of our group doesn't have time to come join us right now, or isn't going to add that component of what we're looking for. So we have to be a bit selective, and it can vary based on what the topic of the show is. I joke, but Adon does not care for Necromunda. So it was an interesting discussion.
He was on the last Necromunda.
Yeah. And we had a conversation about that, and he was like, I don't like this game. And to us, that's mind boggling, but he actually has some valid points.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's not for everybody. Okay. So that being said, we got constructive feedback, and I saw that some people kind of rose to the defense, and I'm like, no, this is fine. Like, this is exactly what I'm asking for. If there is something we're not doing or something you think could be done better with a tweak or whatever, feel free. You can write Josh at josh@theindependentcharacters.com. You can write me at carl@theindependentcharacters.com to provide feedback that way. Yeah. You can give us feedback on the Facebook group.
Yep. Facebook group, Discord, anything, any way you can get a hold of us.
And that's it. That's it. Facebook, Discord, email. That's it. Got to narrow the channels. All right. So leave us reviews, give us feedback, join our Facebook group. If you're not a Facebook user, you can join our Discord.
Yep.
We have lots of great stuff there too.
Patreon supporters, you get all the bonus content with some interviews and the live play of the RPG session,
which is going to release in 2 days.
Some sweet discounts at Herrick Games and Table War and some other things like that. So all definitely check that out if you are able to, and we absolutely appreciate your support if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and then the one other thing I wanted to add, like there was a question that came up recently about where do we pick our elite choice from?
Yeah.
We are looking at primarily our Facebook group for the elite choice, but we are also looking at the Discord channel. There is a hobby progress section of the Discord channel, and we do look there as well. And so we will pull from either of those as we go through our routine of checking stuff and chatting with people and that kind of thing. So feel free to leave pictures of your work in either of those locations. That's where we are looking. So with that, this is Carl.
This is Josh.
And we're coming to you from the Astronomicon, where the biomass is always delicious.
And where war wages ever onwards.
Talk to you next time. This episode of The Independent Characters is protected by the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find information on the front page at theindependentcharacters.com.